that, I would like to call the meeting, the regular board meeting of April 16th, 2019 to order. Please turn your cell phones off at this time. That includes board members, myself included. And I would like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
Rick Colwell.
Here.
Peter Lilly is here. Mike Roman.
Here.
Andrea Voorhees.
Present.
Liz Smith.
Here.
Scott Ruggles.
Here.
Mike Powell. Here.
Thank you. Okay. Looking for a motion or approval of agenda. Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Supervisor, there are a couple items that make note of on the table right in front of everybody. Was a new list of bills dated 4/16/19. There was also a budget amendment correction on your desk, and also there was an addition to item 11A.
Very good. Looking for a
motion to approve the agenda stated.
motion made to approve the agenda. Looking for support. Support. All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda has been approved. Thank you. Okay, moving down to public comment. If anyone in the audience has anything they'd like to say, you got 3 minutes to present your case, so to speak, for items that are not on the agenda. You need to stand up and identify yourself for the court recorder.
Actually, for agenda items, right?
Mary Early, 5925 Pine Ridge Court. We just completed the first session series of classes for CERT last night, and I know Liz Smith is going to want to say more about it because she was in the class. It's the Community Emergency Response Team. It was led by Police Sergeant Jeff Way and Fire Captain Ted Lilly. It's an excellent program. I hope you'll all be able to participate in it at some point, as well as all township employees and all the citizens of White Lake. It starts with your personal preparedness for disaster, whether it's natural, technological, or intentional. And then it leads, of course, to helping police and fire if they're overwhelmed in case of a big disaster. Anyway, it was an excellent program. This was just the first time. They'll be doing another class starting in the fall. I highly recommend it.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else at this time? Seeing as none, we're moving on. Moving on to item 6, consent agenda, list of bills, budget amendments, revenue expenses, checks, appointments, reports, and as such. Looking for a motion?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the item of the list of bills as stated.
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the amended items. Looking for support?
Support.
Mr. Roman, support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Item number 6, minutes, approval of minutes of regular board meeting of March 12, 2019. Questions, comments on the minutes?
Mr. Supervisor,
Yes?
I move, if my colleagues don't have a problem, I move approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of March 12th, 2019, as corrected by miscellaneous suggestions to the clerk's office.
We have an approval. We need support.
I'll support that.
A support from Andrew, I think. All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Item number 8, a proclamation. Well, many of the things that come across our desk are things that we all look at that affect our society differently, and one of them that really affects all of us and is echoed in every community, regardless of where you are in this country, is the National Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month, and that's what we would like to make known to you. There is abuse and neglect to suffer children in our communities, regardless of age, race, gender, or economic situation. 1 in 10 children will be sexually abused before the age of 18. The devastating consequences of physical and emotional abuse of our children affects the community as a whole, and finding solutions needs to be attended by the community as a whole. Care House of Oakland County works to break the cycle of abuse and neglect, provides a protective circle of light and hope for a better life, advocates for the safety and protection of children, and partners with community organizations and agencies to offer programs and services aimed at preventing child abuse. Now therefore, I, Rick Cowell, Supervisor of Whatley Township, do hereby proclaim this month of April as National Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month in the Township of White Lake, and call upon all citizens, community agencies, organizations, and businesses to increase their participation in efforts to prevent the abuse of our children, thereby strengthening and protecting the community in which we live. Thank you. And I would like the adoption of the board. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much. Old business, second reading of the Trailside Meadows rezoning. Mr. O'Neill.
Yes, I'll be quick. Last month, we went through the site plan, preliminary site plan consideration. You approved that with conditions, and tonight before you, and actually at that time, you also moved this rezoning to second reading, and tonight is adoption, zoning map amendment or approval of the rezoning. So it's pretty straightforward. If approved tonight, it is joined with the site plan approval under the PD ordinance. So moving forward, the site plan has to really be approved and successful in order for this to remain rezoned and move forward. So it's
Pretty much it.
questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but everything's been pretty well ironed out.
Questions from the board?
There were some items at the last meeting that were going to be in negotiations with the developer. That is the dedication of that flag lot out to Elizabeth Lake Road, obtaining possibly some easements along the frontage for walkways and sanitary sewers and the like. Has anything progressed along that line?
There have been some discussions, at least I had a discussion with one of the parties regarding an easement, but I don't know if the developer has furthered any of those items yet. They would be a condition of final site plan approval, or the goal would be to obviously obtain easements. The negotiation was that they would obtain easements, and if they were unable to, they would make a deposit equal to the cost of installing the sidewalk, so that the township could hold those funds until such time that easements could be gotten in order to construct it. So there's sort of a backup plan if they're unable to get easements. Obviously, that sometimes takes quite a bit of time. So as far as the flag lot that you're talking about,
Right.
that hasn't gone back to the planning commission yet, and that'll be something that we discuss with them at final, making sure that, I know that you've directed them to try to get that done, but in the event that one of those neighbors may not want to participate, which seems odd, but is certainly a possibility. I don't know that we want to necessarily force them to, but we've got to kind of have those conversations still.
I was just curious if there was any movement on that, so.
Not yet. There's some, and actually, the developer's representatives here tonight. The one question we also need to iron out, and we spoke about this before the meeting, just before she jumps in really quick here, was the deposit that they would like to make, contribution that they would like to make toward the road SAD for Sarah Heights, so they could, or Colony Heights, sorry. And we've got to work with your office, I think, Mike, to determine when and how that exactly happens with the road commission. So that's something that'll be ongoing.
Just to make a quick update. I'm Nikki Jeffries. I'm with MI Homes in Michigan. I think you guys just wanted an update on some of these easements and that flag lot. I know I wasn't here last time, but I believe we were talking about splitting it.
Correct.
To each of the property owners on each side. So we did send letters of intent to those two property owners, basically telling them what we'd like to do. We haven't heard anything back yet, but this was very recently, so we will be reaching out further. But that's our first step in any negotiation like this, is put something in writing, and we'll be reaching out. And as we move through this final site plan process, we'll have more discussions. But we would like to do that as well, and that is our intent, as long as we get buy-in from those two property owners. As far as for the SAD buy-in, I think we've just kind of got to figure out the best way, but we're happy to put up the money whenever the township feels it's needed or wanted. we would prefer to pay the township directly if that's the best way to go. And we'll work with the township to make sure it happens.
Very good. Thank you. So the flag lot owners have been notified?
They've been notified, yes.
Okay.
And that was the intent, obviously, to,
Right.
and to get easements across their frontage for the gift of the half of the flag lot. Right.
That would be a great thing for us in that area. It would really help a lot with our stride to get the sidewalks in that area. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah.
Mr. Lilly?
I just want to make sure that, and I echo these concerns that a preliminary site plan, that the issue of the drainage down Elizabeth Lake Road, make sure that we get that issue addressed.
Yes.
Whether it involves all of them or just part of the equation or not, that whole situation needs to be.
They're actually, that
Part
has
of
been
this,
brought up. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Ms. Smith?
Not really a question, just a follow-up as well, just so we're all on the same page. I believe our last wrap-up of that follow-through was the 20-foot landscape barrier, and I do see that on page 8 of 15 confirmed that there'll be at least 20 feet. I think that was our other concern, to make sure we preserve as much as possible of green space.
That was the plan. Anything else to add, Mr. O'Neill?
No, we'll finalize a lot of that landscaping and buffering as a part of their next step. So we'll be very sensitive to that at the Planning Commission.
Okay. That being said, I'd like to hear a motion moving this on for a second reading and therefore adopting it.
Just to be clear, Sean, you're asking for final site plan approval as well with the rezoning?
No,
Or
it would just be a motion to approve the rezoning request. It could be that straightforward.
I'll make a motion to approve the rezoning request for Trailside Meadows.
Motion, looking for support.
Support.
A support from Mr. Roman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. 9B, approve public safety building spatial planning. I believe Chief Keller and Harvey Holland have something to present to us. I see you brought some support. You guys tired of being in a musty old building?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. We're here again in reference to approval of the public safety building, the spatial planning proposal. We had a committee meeting with myself and Harvey and you, Mr. Colwell, with Mr. Redstone. We're here again to request that Redstone get the bid and do the planning and the spatial planning for a new proposed public safety building.
Okay. Now, the cost of that is
Approximately $25,000.
how much for the total?
Approximately $25,000.
Okay, there's the two planning phases. What's the first phase?
It's the first phase is the wants and needs phase of the program. So they'll come in and they'll talk to both police and fire and get their wants and needs and suggestions, and they'll put that plan together. And then the second phase will be actually getting the nuts and bolts put in place of the layout of the land and the actual building itself.
Okay. Bear with me one moment. Mr. Lilly, I can see you want
Yeah, just to clarify your question there was 12,000 in there for programming and block diagrams and another 13,250 for concept design phase. It would include both of those phases.
I showed this one. So different.
just making sure, Chief. Double checking a couple things here.
Okay.
So you have a total of 24, is that what you said?
No, it's 25.2. Is that correct, Mr. Lilly?
That was 25,250.
I beg your pardon.
25,250.
That's okay. Any questions from the board members?
Mr. Supervisor,
Mr. Powell?
have we received anything from them in the past? Have we paid them any other fees for past work?
I'm I'm not aware if we have or not. I can't answer that question.
Not as part of this project anyway, we haven't yet, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members? I'm glad to see that this is now starting to move forward. One of the main points that we have had through the Civic Center Development Committee is to figure out what it is that we need first. And this will be one of the main legs that will get us going. And then ultimately, we'll continue to focus on the potential new Civic Center building itself. With that, I would like to entertain, you are comfortable and you both gentlemen are ready?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to hear from Harvey if we may.
Well, let me start with saying, there's not a firefighter on the planet that you're gonna build him a new station is gonna be unhappy. And this one is long overdue. In the meeting with Mr. Redstone, it's very obvious he's very knowledgeable about how to put these buildings together. I ran some ideas by him, and I made a suggestion. He elaborated on what I was saying. Yeah, we can do this and that, and then he started talking about wants and needs. And he said, what we need to do is sit down with your guys and discuss what we need. And then he began to list some of the things that he knew that we would need, and we added some other things. And he said, then we'll sit down and the guys can put out their wish list, so to speak. What do you want in there? And I went back and talked with some of the guys about it. And they're pretty pleased at the fact that one, you're getting a new station, and that we're going to get some say in what that station's going to be like. On a personal, I think the buildings together is a great idea. What's better than having the police department across the hall from you if you have a problem, if you have an emergency, and also quite frequently, some of our calls go to the police station. And that's on a pretty regular basis, and now you walk across the hall. But just from the ideas the guys have started throwing out at me, and I know some of the guys here have made some suggestions. Jason Hannafin started talking about, yeah, we got a bay in there where we can do some repairs, we can wash the trucks, we can do this and that, so it started to roll in their mind. And I think this is an excellent plan, a great idea. And I'll tell you, I came from Pontiac. And those stations are old and beat up. We took as good a care of them as what we could to keep them going. And they're actually better stations than what the guys have for their living conditions currently. So moving this into the 21st century and giving these guys a better place to serve is going to be great for their morale and their overall life in general. So.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen. Any other questions from the board?
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes.
One more. Is this amount being equally split from the budgets from both
Yes.
police and fire?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll come out of both budgets. This is going to be a joint effort from here on to the end.
Okay, thank you.
The end.
I-
Yes.
So I guess I'm not, since been gone for a few months, I'm not up to speed on this, but I noticed in the materials they submitted standard contract terms. I presume then what's gonna follow is a contract.
Yes.
And if you wanna move forward, then this board should give you authorization
Thank you.
to work with the attorney, because I can already tell you this last one here
Well,
is
of
not
course.
pretty.
We anticipated that, but you weren't around.
Yeah,
So,
you thought you were gonna get it by before I got back.
He said 24.
Mr. Lilly.
Rick, I think this phase is a very important phase. From the people of the community that went to the last phase of what the meetings were at the school over there, that I think showing people a picture of a blank piece of property, it's hard for anybody to really imagine really the direction of what this board really wants to take. So I believe it's really imperative that part of this process is to convince the citizens of our need. Part of that need has already been established before with the information that has been put together on our buildings so far, as well as this phase here to show the citizens really what our needs are and to be able to physically see it in a blueprint and probably even a conceptual drawings that people can look at. They're the most important phase of this whole thing, is convincing our residents of our needs. So I'm glad we're moving forward on this particular phase. Would be happy to make a motion to approve Redstone Architects, the programming of $12,000 065, 13,250 for a concept design phase for a total of 25,250. Also subject to review of the township attorney, and when those agreements are complete, authorize the supervisor to sign.
Support.
Thank you. I have motion, I have support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Well, it's the first step, gentlemen, we're on our way. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for the support.
Awesome.
Okay. Item 10, new business, 2019 OPEB employer contributions. Mr. Roman, I'm going to let you run with that one.
Thanks, Mr. Supervisor. So I'm asking my fellow board members for permission to make an annual contribution to MERS, who handles the investments for our post-employment benefits, which is retiree health care. I think this is either the 4th or the 5th year that we're making a contribution. I think it's critical that we keep making these. We're making great progress, and if there aren't any questions, I'll put this in the form of a motion.
I believe we all know the obligation that the township has and the future obligation, and the governor's, Rich Snyder, made it very clear that this was a concern statewide. We're very fortunate that White Lake has been fiscally responsible and hasn't fallen far behind. There are communities that have liabilities. One community that's not too far from us, who will go nameless, that has a $142 million liability. I can't even fathom that. And that's what their liability is. Ours is minuscule compared to that. With that, I will take that as a motion to move forward with the OPEB employer contribution of $765,000. I'm looking for support.
Support. Either way.
Mr. Scott, Mr. Ruggles. Support? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have the item 10C, which is the Public Safety Administrative Appointee Wage Classification. Oh, I beg your pardon. How did I see that? Oh, I beg your pardon. 10B, IT Right Software Purchase. Mr. Lilly, your favorite subject. Computers.
At the last meeting, the board approved about $40,000 for hardware cost, and this additional request is for the updated software. The total amount with this approval would be about $54,000 that we have invested in our, I'm going to say, antique equipment at this particular. So this is badly needed.
Unfortunately, when you get the equipment, you have to go with the software. It's kind of a hand in hand. You don't get away with it. This should carry us for a few years, although I know many of you at home have home computer PC units, and you've looked at it and go, boy, that thing's a dinosaur. And it was the greatest thing since sliced bread when you first purchased it. But our technology is changing, and we even have situations where the software will not even have support available to it anymore. So therefore, we're sort of pushed into that. So that being said, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Before you do,
Yes.
Mr. Supervisor, if you recall, the township presented the board with a request for, as Terry pointed out, $40-some thousand for hardware. The question was raised last month whether or not that would prompt the need for additional software. It would have been really nice to have had those done together, because now, all in all, even though we're piecemealing, we're at close to $100,000 now in just upgrading the hardware and software in the township.
There was a total of 53.
It's a total of 54,000.
Plus, it's 13 for the.
13,000 for the software.
Okay, thank you, I misread that, because it says 13 quantity at $13,000, total due of 54. I didn't realize that was part of the hardware as well.
Right, Terry?
That was the
Software's
previous
just the 13.
40,000 we approved
Plus
plus
this.
additional 13.
Huge difference. I thought it was 54,000 on top of the 40.
Yes, that's how I was taking it too.
So, that being said, this is not extremely clear on whether or not this includes IT rights cost to actually do the installation and do all the hookups. So do we have a cost now that's going to hit us next month?
No,
for
that
the-
was part of the original
Yep.
equipment quote, was installation.
Installation of the equipment, but what about installation of the software?
That'll be probably loaded up in the computers before we even get them.
Okay, so you're saying next
Typically.
month we won't be hit with another cost for, okay. All right, thank you, Mr.
At least
Superman.
that's what he's telling me anyway.
All right.
Throw me under the bus.
No, we weren't sure on the exact amount. We knew there was software issues and that it was coming behind, but we wanted to make sure the equipment was in order and we could get things rolling on. Yes, Mr.
I'd
Rowan.
like to make a motion for software, not to exceed 13,500 from IT Right.
I have a motion to approve the software purchase for 13.5. Looking for support.
Support.
I have support from Andrew Voorhees. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on to 10C, which is the Public Safety Administrative Appointee Wage Classification. Okay, well, we've had some conversation as to what direction we might be going with our departments, and one of them is a vacancy that we have in our fire department, of which we are looking to fill. There has been some ongoing homework that's been done to review the wages that are paid to our chiefs and where we stand in relationship to adjacent communities. It's come to my attention through our HR department and through our labor attorney that we have been on the lower end of the scale, and I believe that this township needs to come up a little bit so that we can have the ability to attract and retain quality people. We have a very good safety status. I believe it was the 16th safest city in the state last year. Our fire department, I would put it up against any other fire department that we have in their serviceability and their professionalism. We had overwhelming support with the millage renewals at 74 and 76%. Got to pick it up there a bit, Dan. You're behind. Okay. And I believe that the public wants this type of professional services in this community because we are only as good a community as we are perceived safe. And by being perceived safe is when you pick up the phone and dial 911, somebody comes. And that takes a professional group of people, which is why we're trying to move them into a new building, try to get them up to speed, and we need to take a look at what we are doing. It has been excess of 15 years since this salary scale was looked at in the township, I believe. Is this correct, Catherine? Okay. Catherine is our HR director. Catherine Director. And so therefore, we've moved it forward. We have had some conversation as to what the scale is. There was some conversation with Dan Keller. Chief, if I'm not mistaken, you are willing to waive your longevity in light of these increases? Okay. So that would address some of the issues that the township has. We want to increase, but we have to be fair and equitable. And longevity is paid to officers, in this particular case, have been here an extended period of time. I believe it's no longer offered in our, correct. So it's an older, grandfathered scale. The chief is willing to forego that and head into this new scale, which will make us more competitive and in turn allow us to attract more talent that's out there. There's a new talent that comes in the fire department, whether it's a existing employee within the fire department or it's a outside person coming into the fire department, will abide by the schedule that we have, because they would be obviously first-year chief and there and done. Any questions or comments from the board?
I have just a real quick statement on what you said. I think it is absolutely correct, and I believe our HR director did tell us that it's been 15 years since we've had a direct comparison study with the surrounding communities. That doesn't mean that it's been 15 years since there's been compensation increases and the modification of the scale. So the way you stated that, it was
That is
like...
true, however, you don't make sure the public understands that these changes that have come have been basically mirroring or mimicking whatever the union contract is. So for example, if the union contract approved a 2% pay increase, they would get that 2%. But nonetheless, if you start to look at the dynamics of the payroll, as it goes up, everybody goes up 2%, and the differentiation between higher ranking lieutenants and sergeants and such starts to get closer to what the chiefs make, because their ability also to make overtime, which the chiefs do not. We have that dynamic in there too.
And certainly I'm in agreements, and I'm in agreements that we need to modify the scale. It just came across as though we hadn't added any increases to the command patrol or the command officers for 15 years. And we certainly have been keeping pace with inflation.
With
and
2% inflation,
and
but
so-
not in the pay structure itself.
Correct, so thank you.
Any other questions by the board? Mr. Ruggles?
Yeah, we were talking about Dan's willing to waive his longevity. So will we have a certain kind of wording that anybody that takes this wage classification will be unable to utilize longevity then? Not just Dan, it'll be anybody.
Yeah.
I believe we could put that in there as part of the terms of this.
It
Yeah.
phases itself out, but it doesn't hurt to just
Correct.
put it in there in
Right.
case.
Yeah, I believe we can do that, we can amend this agreement as necessary and finalize it.
Now, the agreement, and I know you sprang this on us just this last minute here, did Dan agree to eliminate the longevity wage from this year forward, or when he tops out?
From my understanding, once this scale takes effect, I would say it would prorate whatever it is, and Kathy would have to work it out with HR
Okay, good.
and do the math.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. And I will commend Chief Keller for
Me too.
working with us and understanding that we are at a crossroad where we need to bring in a new fire chief, and he has truly been an asset to the community. I don't want to get his head too big; he won't be able to walk through the door. But he not only has been in this community a number of years, but he sold his home in Goodrich, right? And moved here and now lives and resides in our community. So that tells me a lot about his investment here. So, and I believe he's going to stick around for a while. So, and hopefully that's what part of this will do also, entice you to stay. Any other questions or comment from the board?
I have a question.
Mr. Ruggles?
Will living in the township be a requirement of the next fire chief or not?
I believe that's illegal in the state of Michigan.
Right.
Is it?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Only politicians are required to.
So you can't.
And not even all. You can be in a congressional district, but here we all live.
Yeah.
It's crazy, yeah. You can live in Marquette and run for a congressional district here. Go
Didn't know.
figure. Okay.
Pretty bizarre.
Mr. Roman?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed wage scale for police and fire chiefs, and that the new proposed figures exclude any longevity pay.
Support that.
So duly noted. We have support from, Mr. Roman and Liz Smith, supported, correct?
Under discussion?
Discussion?
The way that was worded regarding longevity pay, it doesn't include it, but it also does not apply anymore either.
No longer applies.
I'll amend the motion so that
Amend it.
longevity pay no longer applies.
Yes, thank you.
Very good.
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
I amend my support.
very good. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Neill, preliminary site plan of West Valley.
Thank you. I just have to find this. Okay. So this project, West Valley, is located on the west side of Union Lake Road, across from Carpathian Drive, and okay, here's Union Lake Road. St. Pat's is here. Sort of a boot-shaped parcel right here. It consists of approximately 15 acres and is currently zoned RM1 attached single family, which is sort of a less intense multiple family classification, even though it's called attached single family. So it does allow for this type of project to move forward. You may recall rezoning this property last year from, I believe, it was a single family classification. I believe it was ag to RM1. Might have been R1A. At any rate, on March 21st, this was before the Planning Commission for site plan consideration, and at that time they recommended approval subject to addressing all the conditions of the staff and consultants. This is sort of, I'm going to go right to the site plan first. The way this scans in is, let's see here. Page 36. Okay, give me 1 second. Mr. Sieber, who is the engineer for the project, is here and can probably address questions that you might have. But here's the layout. As you can see, it's sort of a shoe-shaped property. When it first was under review, there were 70 units. Now there are 69 units. Again, it is appropriate. The density is appropriate for the zoning classification. All these units will be on the municipal water and sewer system. The road layout's pretty obvious here in this aerial. Because there's a long dead end, they were required to either suppress the buildings or provide a secondary access, means of access for emergency, which is what this drive is. So the units will not be suppressed, but let me zoom in a little bit. Cedar Island Road is, and actually this might be easier to see. Cedar Island Road kind of curves through here and turns into Casa Loma. So what you're seeing when we flip back and forth is a connection that comes kind of through the wooded area and comes out on Cedar Island, which is right here. Obviously there's an impact on this neighbor more than anyone else. One of the conditions that you may have seen in the minutes was that I meet with the engineer and the owner, Mrs. Jackson, out on site to really discuss how this was going to impact her. Beyond what you see in your packet and beyond what was included in the review comments, the changes, and I think I can comfortably say, and Cliff, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to zip down here. Hopefully I'm not going too fast. Here you can see this dash line is the fence along the property line. Here is the stormwater basin. There's another fence, 6-foot vinyl fence that'll run along the south side of the property here, along the backs of these lots. This home is, again, most impacted, and so the discussion on site was that this fence would be moved right up to about the edge of this basin, which has to have a 42-inch railing on it per code anyway, so it kind of takes care of both of those issues for the applicant, and then kind of opens this area up a little bit more for this adjacent homeowner who, while she will not own this land, the fence won't be quite as near to her property, and she seemed to be agreeable to that, as well as rather than going following this line here, there was a discussion about running, again, running the fence along the edge of the basin and then tapering it back to the corner here. Moving further north, they're going to preserve trees and possibly supplement some of the plantings that are already there. There's quite a wooded area. Some of these homes, not to say that they won't be impacted and they won't have concerns as well, but they've got quite a large wooded rear yard, which is not the case over here. So additionally, what this plan does not show, and we had talked about on site, was moving a fire hydrant that's roughly in this location but inside a gate, because this will be for emergency access only. So there'll be a Knox key provided to the fire department and to the association for maintenance and snow removal. They can get through here, but the public's not going to be allowed to go back and forth through here. So the hydrant kind of being behind this gate would potentially provide a little bit of a challenge, and there really was no need for it. So there was discussion about bringing the hydrant down here, into the Cedar Island Road or Casa Loma right-of-way, which would give it more close access or put it in closer proximity to several of the homes that are in this area, which would certainly be a public safety benefit. And if I flip back to this aerial, it's a little harder to see, but beneath all these trees, the hydrant would be in roughly this area, and you can see there are quite a few homes that would be within the 400 or 500 feet of this hydrant that would really benefit from that. I don't think there are any hydrants very nearby in this area, so I don't know. Cliff, would you find that to be accurate? Are you still on the same page with that? Okay. So those are just a couple of updates since this was at the Planning Commission, and that your minutes would not address, and then a couple of, I think, important changes that are going to be beneficial to some of the surrounding owners, whether they're adjacent or just down the street. So again, the recommendation from the planning commission was for approval. The road commission's seen the road layout and they're okay with it. Ideally we would have had 2 points of access with this many homes, but it really, due to topography and the odd shape of this parcel, it wasn't quite possible at this time. So that is why this secondary emergency access was required. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I kind of moved through it quickly. I don't know if Mr. Siebert has anything to add. Again, he's the engineer on the project.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Mr. Lilly?
John, earlier in our conversation, you had already mentioned something having to do with Mrs. Jackson's driveway. Is that an issue that's been resolved at this particular point?
We were trying to decide how exactly, because this will be a paved access point, and Cedar Island is gravel, as is Casa Loma. So the area in gray here will be paved, and you can't see it so well, and I don't know that this is going to be helpful because there are a ton of trees. This is the house that you're mentioning, Terry, and you really can't. I don't even know if we can drop the little guy down on the, I guess we can.
There we go.
There you are. So this is the area we're talking about here. This is where the road curves. So the drive is going to kind of come through the woods here and tie into the Jackson driveway. So there was kind of some question, and Cliff may be able to expound upon this further. Looks like roughly with the plan that's shown, about a third of the driveway would be paved. And my concern, I think everyone's concern, was just that it'd be kind of awkward. So we're going to take a look at possibly doing more to improve the situation so it wasn't, awkward or wouldn't negatively impact her access to her home. And Cliff, I don't know if you have more to add on that. I know you.
I did speak with the applicant developer this afternoon, and after meeting with Mrs. Jackson and Sean at the site last week, the developer has agreed to pave the remainder of her driveway right up to the garage. So by doing that, you won't have this separate kind of driveway crossing a portion of her. It's in the road right of way, but it crosses part of her existing driveway. So this way, it'll make it all look as one. It makes it all
look like it should be.
Yes,
Right.
I guess so. That's right.
Yeah. Very good.
So, and that was certainly the hope leaving that meeting, and there had to be some conversations. So that's the first I've heard of it. So I'm pleased to hear that, because that really, it is an awkward situation for her. While it is road right away, she's lived there for decades, and it's going to be a big change. So she is clearly the most impacted neighbor. So that's the right thing to do. So all in all, I think that as every week's passed since this was the planning commission, I think the plan's getting a little bit better, and I'm comfortable with where it's at now, and I would certainly concur with the planning commission's position on it. And I think when if this is to ultimately go back to them for final, I think they'll be pleased at the development, because as Mr. Ruggles can attest from being there, they were concerned about the impact on the neighbor, and I think efforts have certainly been made to try to minimize that and improve her situation. So
What are the gates like again that go up there?
I don't know if there is an elevate. They'll just be kind of swing gates, won't they, Cliff? And there'll just be a lock. The Knox lock allows for either party to lock and unlock that gate. It would only be unlocked if it needed to be accessed for an emergency and or for like snow removal or maintenance, things like that.
I just didn't know if we'd seen an image of the gates, and not that it matters.
We'll ask for that at the planning commission. You can kind of see, let me zoom in here, it's sort of tucked away. You'll be able to see it from certain angles, but you can see it's held back. So the fence, that'll be a question, because if the fence is going to be moved back, I think we may want to have some landscaping kind of in there, some shrubs and
Have an
things.
opportunity to go around the gate.
They don't want to be able to, you don't want someone to go around the gate, and sometimes too much fencing can look, we don't want it to look like a prison either, but, some
Hate to have a
landscaping.
lot of traffic coming in off the road, wondering what it is, and then turning around, and so I don't know.
I think when it's actually, the way it's going to tuck up into her driveway, I don't think after a little while it's going to be a big problem. It's going to really look like her driveway.
Right.
Pretty much.
Or a separate private entrance to some other, I don't think it's going to look terribly inviting. And I think we talked about maybe changing the layout of it, or the curve of it may change, don't you think, Cliff, slightly?
Yes.
When it gets paved, to make it look, as you said, or somebody said, more like her driveway and not like, I think you said, Rick, but.
I was just thinking, if I lived there, I'd hate to have it turn into, just this big turnaround, a bunch of traffic wondering what it is in my driveway all the time, but I don't know if you need
Are you
signage for
comfortable
that.
with this?
You don't have a choice, so.
But you have a voice right now, so are you comfortable with it?
Talk to them.
We know that she'd rather it be left stand of woods, and I would too if I lived there. But obviously that's not what we're planning on. But I think the goal was certainly to at least minimize the impact
Right.
if possible.
And that's what this discussion is for. We can tweak it a little bit. So if you would like us to talk about it,
I think that's something the planning department will work out internally with Mr. Seifert and with the homeowner, and they can decide what's going to be in their best interest. That may not be something you're really going to notice or see until they actually start doing some clearing there. So I would think that Sean would look out for your interest, and
Yeah.
you would be in good shape. And Mr. Stahlberg is a very community conscientious gentleman. I don't think he'll do something that won't enhance your home. Mr. Powell.
Sorry, I was just going to quickly show you some elevations. This is just a typical elevation. We will at final get into more precise elevations, but these are 4-plex, 5-plex, 6-plex type buildings. I should look at the plan exactly to let you know, but I think there's going to be some broken up roof lines, some higher quality external material, as you can see, kind of some typical brick and shingle type examples. This isn't the greatest. There's nothing to pass around right now. We'll dive more into that at the Planning Commission, but just to give you kind of a rough idea. They kind of vary the roof lines a bit to kind of break them up to make them look more attractive. So I didn't mean to interrupt. And there's a floor plan, but didn't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Powell.
Mr. Powell?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Certainly, I believe this plan adheres to all the requirements of the zoning ordinance and the development engineering standards. I had a question of maybe the planning staff and possibly the developer's engineer. I noticed that the proposed sidewalks within the development are right adjacent to the curb instead of set back to isolate the sidewalk from the actual travel lanes in the development. Most of the time we like to see a separation between pedestrian walkways and the travel lanes of a roadway, and didn't know why we have this one adjacent to the curb instead of away from the curb by about 5 feet or so.
I think part of the logic and reasoning was just there wasn't going to be any cut-through traffic. There weren't going to be. This is similar, I think, to Redwood's project, Worthington Crossing, which has the same configuration. And actually, I think that one has it just on one side of the street, though. But we have shorter driveways here, and so it was going to be more difficult to bring them further from the road and not have cars parking over them in this layout and configuration. And it's not that they're cramming too much in. I mean, they could have actually stacked more units in here. It was just the way they laid out. It made more sense to have them closer to the road in that similar fashion.
Okay, that being said, there might be two items that I'd like discussion on. Number one, where they have parking butting up against that sidewalk, especially in the guest parking areas. It still shows only 5 feet, but 2 to 3 feet of a car overhangs those sidewalks. And so you've essentially cut off the sidewalks then in the areas where it's being used, where the cars are going to butt up against it. And
Okay, so we'll make a note to widen the sidewalk out for overhang, because I don't think we want
Yes.
parking blocks because they're a trip hazard, but we'll definitely widen the walks. if
parking
that's-
blocks or parking
Yeah.
bumpers are terrible. Yeah. So if we were to increase the sidewalk to 7 or 8 feet there where the cars butt against it, and then I'm hoping, it looks like the majority of the site's going to have a mountable curb and gutter. You might want to have at least a 6-inch rise to that sidewalk there where the cars are going to butt against it so they don't roll up on the sidewalk. I'm just reading the plan as it's presented here, and it's not too detailed that way. Then I noticed along Union Lake Road, and I know Ms. Smith and I were some of the proponents for an 8-foot wide walkway along Union Lake Road, and a previous development was proposed as only 5 feet. So I'm very pleased with an 8-foot here along Union Lake Road, and it's going to be a great walkway. It's separated from Union Lake Road and out in the middle of a landscaped area, so it's going to be a great walkway there. The question I have is, who owns the little triangle at the southwest or southeast corner of this site? It looks like it's going to be isolated, and sometime in the future we're going to have a terrible time linking that with whatever is done further to the southeast. And does the planning department know who owns that little triangle?
I don't, but that is not a very large parcel, and I don't know. It seems limited with its. I mean, it could actually be property owning across the street. You know how sometimes I'm thinking it could be the person across,
Right.
but we can look into that.
So it'd be awesome if the developer were to say, you know what, as part of our public benefit, we'd extend it further to the south if easements could be obtained or something could be worked out so that it gets us a little closer to downtown Union Lake. I know that's our plan, to eventually get the sidewalk all the way downtown to Union Lake so that people can walk and ride their bike to the Union Lake area. And then up at the northwest corner of the site, up the cul-de-sac, I would hope, even though I think the property to the north of this is zoned commercial, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. I think it's. Yeah, it might be a split zone, but it's local. It's for sure local business.
It would be great if during this site plan approval we could contemplate that the walkway at the end of that cul-de-sac, at the very least, be able to be tied into that commercial development, so there could be a loop all the way back out to Union Lake Road, and it might allow for a little better access to whatever goes into that property to the north and Union Lake Road as well. Right now, it's kind of shut off, and we in the business would call that a grudge strip, and so it's possible that we might want to have an access to that commercial property in the future. And then I'd like your position too, Sean, on the sidewalk as it goes around through people's driveways. I believe in the Redwood project, that whole project was concrete, and so there wasn't a lot of variation between the sidewalk and the driveway. If these are going to be asphalt, it'd be really nice to where the concrete went all the way through the driveways, so that there's two ways to look at it. So that's why I'm asking you your question. If the person on the sidewalk doesn't realize this driveway coming up and he's on concrete all the way around, he's not going to be paying attention to the driver that might be backing out, seeing that he's going into a driveway. And the same thing with the traffic coming up and down the driveway won't think that there's a sidewalk crossing his driveway. And so it's a pro and con of carrying the concrete sidewalk all the way through the driveways instead of stopping at the edge of the driveway. You following what I'm saying?
You're saying with a material. You're saying
With
so
the
if-
material,
right.
carrying the concrete through the driveway versus stopping it.
Do you know what kind of material they're going? Are they going all concrete with driveways and road here, Cliff?
I don't think they've made that decision. I think it's probably asphalt. But I think the idea of carrying the sidewalk all the way through is a good one.
Okay.
And it's
It
typically
defines the area.
Right. So that would be great. Those are just my observations.
Sure.
It's going to be I think it's going to be a very nice project. It's certainly going to really help on all the traffic up and down Union Lake Road, right? I'm being facetious, but it is what it is. So thank you.
Great to get some road work done.
It would be great to get
Keep
some road
working
work
at it.
done.
Any other comments from the board? Okay, with that, I'd like to move forward. I'd like to see if we get,
Taking comments?
I beg your pardon?
Are you taking comments from the public?
Well,
We
maybe.
always.
I don't know. Gonna make me some cookies? Hey, somebody brought us cookies in here at a presentation a while ago. We really liked that, remember?
We do not take bribes and cookies. Yes, you may have a comment.
Bribes, no, cookies, yes, no. Please do. What, go ahead. I say that with great affection, by the way.
Donuts, I might do. Mary Early, 5925 Pine Ridge Court. At the Planning Commission, I asked about this project. It's all apartments. And I asked if one of the units was going to be a management office. And I was told the answer is no. So there's no management on site. They are not putting in street lights because their plan is to put in lights at the garages and at the front doors. And I asked who would be maintaining those lights, and it's the apartment complex management. I want to know who's going to be observing that. Do they have a crew that comes around at night and observes burned out bulbs? Are the people supposed to report that? They have broken windows. This is apartments. They're not the same as people who own their own residence. So my concern is about maintenance, and if it's not done well, it can lead to degradation, becomes a sore spot. If there's no lights, leads to crime. Those are my concerns.
Should I kiss you now or later? Now, the reason I say that, and are you done? I don't want to interrupt you.
No, I'm finished. Thank you.
Is that the township right now, as we speak, is working on a rental ordinance for the community. We have not had one here in this community. Neighboring communities do. And this ordinance will move forward here this year and would be a tool in the box for the township to address every one of these things that you're talking about. But I do believe that the reputation of the individual that manages it, that is going to manage it and own it, I do not believe that's going to be an issue because they're going to be in a market of price that they're not going to want to have anything detract from what they're doing. These aren't going to be your $700 a month,
Right.
$800 a month apartments.
I did know that.
So there's no benefit to them to be the proverbial slumlord.
Okay.
And again, your timing is correct, as we are in the process of working on that particular ordinance so that we can have the ability and the authority and the power to police such type of things.
Very
Thank you
good.
very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Any other comment on this?
Is the property not
Stand up and identify.
April Pakmar, Spinal Column. I was curious, is it not going to Hutchins? Is the property not going all the way to Hutchins Road now?
That's
Is
a different
that-
development. This is a different development.
Oh, I'm thinking we're over there. Okay.
You're in the wrong spot, dear.
I'm in the wrong
That's
spot.
close. That's
Okay.
this
You're
one.
close.
Thank you.
It's on, it's to the
Stone's throw
north.
away.
To the north, there's going to be another development.
Around that little
Yeah, that's not this one.
inlet. Okay, cool.
Right.
That one is going back to this room.
Mr. Lilly,
I'm willing to make a motion.
please do. Go ahead.
Make a motion to approve a preliminary site plan, subject to staff and consultant comments, including the recent meeting that took place with Mrs. Jackson to resolve the fire hydrant issue, the driveway issue, and the fencing issue.
And to work with administration.
Hopefully they can come to some consensus that
And to work with
Mrs. Jackson can live with, and they can make a great plan. So,
I have a motion, I have support.
I'll support if Mr. Lilly modifies his motion to include, make the additions as discussed by the board tonight as well, as directed by the planning department.
amend my motion to include you.
I'll support that motion then.
Okay, we have a motion, we have support.
Can I ask a question?
Mr.
So
O'Neill.
one of the things that was discussed tonight had to do with sidewalk on someone else's property. So I guess well, I'm happy to explore that. I don't.
You can't adhere to that
Right.
because we
And
don't
I
know
just
what
want
they're
to acknowledge that. Okay.
Totally agree.
We understand.
That's
Okay.
not something we can dictate. Okay, motion, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, thank you very much. Next item, 10E, Suez Brezur? Verazur, okay, close enough. Verazur, pilot study agreement for Aspen Meadows Iron Filtration Plant. As most of you folks know, our water system In the last few years, we were able to build an iron filtration plant, which made a measurable difference in the amount of iron that is in our water. That is ultimately going to help preserve everything in your house, as well as the water system that you own. So this is a tool in the box to help provide better water quality. And this is a second location which has been on the books for quite some time, and we are now exploring that. Mr. Potter.
Yes, so you have before you a pilot study proposal. And DPS is seeking permission from the board to commission the pilot study through Suez with the help of HESCO, which is the local representative for Suez. HESCO, in this pilot study, there were two different quotes, one for the pilot itself and then one for the engineer's time to come out and set up the pilot. I have personally worked on Suez pilots on 3 different occasions in Waterford Township, our neighbors, where I came from. They have all produced finished plants, and Glenn Hummel has offered to assist us in assembling these pilots at no cost to the township. And so about this process a little bit. So this is a biological filter, iron filter, that was developed in the 70s in France that uses naturally occurring groundwater bacteria. These bacteria, through an enzyme process, absorb a component of the iron molecule as a nutrient, and the precipitate is basically a ferric iron, solid iron. So the process is extremely efficient. We piloted and studied this, like I say, several times in Waterford Township. It is a very high flow rate filter, which leads to smaller footprint, smaller equipment costs, very efficient process using nature. It's a very green friendly process. It uses what's naturally already there to filter the iron. And then what you're left with is a pretty clean iron-free effluent that requires very little chlorine to make it safe to drink. We had very excellent results with this. We have 3 of these plants in Waterford Township. Independence Township has 1 of these plants. So we feel like this is a very good option for the township. They're very extremely efficient to operate and pretty low cost option. So we've looked at, obviously we built a Tonka plant in another area in the township. Didn't quite get the results that we wanted with that. The pilot study on that process was very limited. And we feel that this 2-month pilot will give us an opportunity to get at least 3 or 4 complete filter runs on this, and so that we can take that data and extrapolate operational costs, hopefully chemical costs, all those things that we would need to have a pretty good solid understanding of what we're going to need to operate this plant.
Yeah, I think this going down this avenue is far better than any other one, because again, it's as natural and as an organic process as possible. You can envision a bunch of little millions and billions of little micro Pac-Men running around chewing up, well, that's what it looks like.
About $1 trillion per inch.
Chewing out the iron.
Is that a right number? A
Yeah.
trillion per inch?
About $1 trillion per inch.
Yeah. So
What's their life longevity, each bacteria?
I don't know that one.
Mr. Lilly.
I don't know.
Funny, Lisa.
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the Suez for our pilot study agreement for Aspen Meadows iron infiltration plant, subject to the attorney's review, and authorize the township supervisor to sign in the amount of $14,000. And I'd just like to make a note that Aaron had sent us a video to look at. I did review that video, and as Mike indicated, about half of that was a little bit over my head, but continue to be impressed by Aaron's professionalism and his desire to move this township forward, particularly in water and sewer. And I will support Aaron's recommendation for this project.
Very good. I have a motion, looking for support.
Support.
Support from Mr. Powell.
Yes.
No conversation?
No conversation. I'm in total support.
Aaron,
Very good.
score one on
It's a
you.
great option.
Mr. Roman.
Before we vote, I have a question for Mike and Aaron. When we put the first iron filtration plant in, I thought a lot more of our residents were going to get better quality water. With this new one, what percentage of our total water users will you say that this new plant will help out?
So the because of the way the pressure districts are separated in our water system, the Village Acres plant feeds about 1,270 homes. And we have the ability with that plant to feed more homes during portions of the year, but there's a chemistry difference with the phosphate that we use in that plant versus what we use in this district. So, in answer to your question, average daily demand, just like Village Acres, we would be able to provide with 100% of the township water users iron-free water with this plant. But now during peak demand, our peaking factor is, close to 6 times our average factor. And during those times of the irrigation season, peak use hours, we will still require our other plants to operate. And so this will cover almost 100% of the wintertime demand. And in the summer, it will be just like what we have in the Southern District, with the average demand being covered with iron filtration, but we will still need to use those other plants during peak demand.
And to look at this from a technological standpoint, this would be the second plant of which the township, as at its current growth in its customer base, is probably ultimately going to need 3 of these plants throughout the township. How many does Waterford have?
Waterford has 10.
There you go. So these are necessary when you have a certain amount of volume. So with 2 of them, we would suffice the need for the township on a day-to-day use for the most part, except over peak time. And then eventually, when we're able to move on down in the future, and we build another plant, because again, this is just a pilot study for a plant, not building the plant, that eventually that would hopefully put us in a better position, which would then we would meet or exceed our peak capabilities.
Yeah, and the township has researched this. I have with me tonight the feasibility study from September of 2004 that we commissioned with Johnson and Anderson. This plan follows along with that feasibility study. This, my sequence of plan additions, when I looked at it, I didn't even know about this study. We actually found this in a box in our office when we were scanning documents into our digital repository. But, just, it doesn't seem to matter who looks at our system. We all seem to come up with the same answers. It's a fairly straightforward process.
Very good. Okay. Well, where were we?
I have one last question while I have Aaron here. He and I don't
You didn't
seem
have
to-
any questions.
I know.
And now you started up again.
Well, he offered more information. I noticed that you said that we have a peaking factor of about 6 in the summertime for our water flow. If you ever thought it was necessary for this board to take some action and maybe limit watering of grass to every other day or even days of the week versus odd days of the week to get that peaking factor down, I think the residents in the township that are tied to the water system would realize the benefit if we did that, so that we could allow more treated water to their home instead of on the grass. And
There's
so-
a a positive side to that and a negative side. We always have the ability to limit water use in an emergency, but the negative side is that then we're limiting the revenue that we collect, because we do make, we operate based on some of that use as well. And so when we start to limit that, then we need to make up that gap elsewhere, and a lot of times that, becomes unpopular as well.
All I did is ask you to study it, and if necessary, bring it back to the board.
I appreciate that.
Okay, very good. Motion and support.
If I could just comment. Once again, I noticed that there is a contract in here, and there are some provisions, specific provisions in here about insurance, indemnification, and hold harmless, which the township cannot do. So I just want to point out that there's some concerns with that contract, so you might want to.
I think the motion included your checking it and,
My motion did include
right,
the attorney's review and authorize the township supervisor to sign,
Right.
so that
It's in there.
covered that.
yep, it's in there.
You've
Right.
trained us well. Yes, Mr.
One
Lowell.
additional comment, I just, for the record, I want everybody to know, and some are probably new here, that at the time that the Village Acres plant was planned and provided the revenue for it, the board, Aaron was not here. So, we committed to a project that Aaron had little input into what's doing, and I think he did a remarkable job by making it finally work, but feel much more confident that his recommendations will do a much better job than
Agreed.
what happened before.
Agreed. Okay, motion, support, in favor.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on. Okay, Mr. Potter, agreement to retain Baker Tilly for water rate study.
Yes, so, as my memo states, in light of recent growth in the system and projected capital improvement projects, changes in management and operations, we are requesting the board to approve DPS to commission a rate study with Baker Tilly. So you have before you, what did they call this? I forget what they called it. Basically, it's a proposal. They had some odd term for it. Anyway, so Baker Tilly used to be called Unbound Associates. We had a rate study done with them in 2010. I did find quite a bit of documentation where maybe some tweaking was done on that in 2014, 2015, but it's been a while since we've done one. We're growing very fast. We would like to make sure that these changes that we're making to the system are covered, and so we think it's a good time to go ahead with the rate study.
When was the last time we had one done, you said?
2010.
So we're due. Mr. Lully.
Make a motion to approve the water rate study to be conducted by Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors, formerly the UMBA, and associates, subject to the attorney's review, and authorize the townships to sign. And just for the record, I want it noted that Tom from UMBA, or now Baker Tilly, has done most of our rate studies for water, as well as we have used Benzinski and Company in the past for sewer. So it's not unusual that both of those companies have provided services to this township.
We have strong relationships with them, and they
Yes,
provided
both
us
of them.
very well and know our systems. So, motion, looking for support.
I'll support.
Support from Andrew. All in favor?
Aye.
Whoop, comment, Mr. Roman?
Yeah, Aaron, I know I'm stating the obvious, but just want to make sure that they are going to look at the cost of this new iron filtration system as part of that rate study.
As
And
well as
also-
Village Acres.
Sorry?
As well as Village Acres.
Correct, as well, and also the sewer main project down Bogey Lake Road. I'm
That's
not
a different-
sure where that
That's
stands.
not a sewer
Different
project.
person, Mike.
Water main,
Yeah,
Oh,
the water main.
that's a water.
water main.
That is basically what we will be calling future capital projects.
Okay,
And
so
yes,
that's all,
That will be incorporated in this.
I got too many sewers going on.
Yep,
Water,
we
water.
all do.
Water main.
Water, not sewer. Okay. We're
Motion
good?
and support.
We had good support, and we all said aye, right? I did hear some ayes in there.
No, I don't think we, oh, yeah,
I did hear a
aye,
few.
yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're
Yes.
good again. Okay, thank you. I think we're going to take a 5-minute break, okay, at this moment in time. I'd like to recess for 5 minutes. Thank you. please, at this time. I'd like to proceed on to item 10G, which is the award bid for the construction of the Settlers Point Stormwater Basin Project. Mr. Potter.
Yes, so Settlers Point, we are asking the Board of Trustees to award the contract for the remediation of Settlers Point stormwater system basins to TSP Services. Following the attached recommendation letter from Johnson and Anderson, they were the low bidder on the project. We did receive several other bids, as you have in the tabulation. They met all of our requirements and gave back. Johnson and Anderson did follow up with their references, and we received excellent references on this company.
Very good. Mr.
Pending.
Lilly. Oh, I'm sorry. I beg your
I
pardon.
almost forgot. Pending the confirmation of the role, which is our next item.
You good? Aaron?
I think so.
Good? I beg your pardon.
They
Mr.
stole my motion. I'll make it.
Mr. Lilly.
Motion to approve the recommendation of J&A to TSP Services in the amount of $128,821.39 for Settlers Point Detention Basin remediation, subject to final approval of the special assessment. And as Aaron indicated, it's going to be the next item, so I hope there would not necessarily be any need for that, but just in case it gets postponed.
Very good. Mr. Ruggles?
I have a question, just about the quote here. I wonder if it would be beneficial to us to actually solicit some kind of a quote from a tree company. They have $42,000 to remove 54 trees. It seems excessive to me. I mean, $700 a tree for small trees, but I don't know if it would be wise to exclude the tree business from these individuals and put that out to bid separately, because that's ridiculous.
At this point, this is the low bidder on the project, and I do not want to delay this project any further. And I don't believe that in the end, we're going to see ultimately, what I don't want to get into a scenario is where it's, this one's doing this one, this one's doing that. We have one contract that's going to handle from start to finish and has that chain of responsibility for the project, of which Mr. Potter's comfortable with.
I understand what you're saying, but I mean, TSP Services, are they TSP Tree Company? Maybe that's not their expertise anyways. They could just be, pulling some other guy in, making a profit on that angle of it, but that's just my opinion.
I'm going to chime in with Mr. Ruggles. Most contractors will say, please take something like that from me. So even though it's bid this way, I highly ask and recommend that the township approach them and say, if we can take that out of your project, will you allow us to? We can't take it out without their concurrence. But because it's low bid, that doesn't mean that we can't take it out if they agree. It's an incredibly high cost, and I would like to see if staff couldn't do that.
I mean, that's 6 to 18-inch trees. It's not a big tree.
Yeah. That's a fun one afternoon, right?
It is. 50 trees is not a big day,
Yeah.
Well, I'm not in the tree business, so
I would go
I'm
along
going
with
to take your
supporting
recommendation on that.
as
I
well.
will say that,
taking- exploring that option.
I just think there's
Excuse me,
nothing but...
Mr. Potter was speaking. Mr. Potter?
I'm sorry, I think, go ahead. I can.
I just was saying, I agree with Mr. Powell and Mr. Ruggles here that I don't think that's a bad option to explore, taking that piece out.
I would like to, we created a bid specification for this, and I think that at this point, I think it'd be unfair of us to ask TSP Services to grant us unit pricing based on a contract specification that's now changing after they bid. I think that effectively is going to put this back out to bids.
let me
Okay,
state
I
that,
understand what you're saying.
let me state that if they say no, then I concur with you. But it certainly doesn't hurt to approach them. In contracts like this, some contractors will say, please, take that out of our contract, it's a nuisance to us, and we'll take all the other work. Let me add something else, because is our contract written and the proposal written to where it gives this township the ability to modify the contract and the unit amounts at the discretion of the township board, or is our contract not that loose?
I'm gonna have to turn that one over to our engineering firm. I don't believe that language is in this, but I didn't write this specification. I reviewed it, but I think I'd like to punt that over to Jay.
I don't mean to interject here, but what I am going to do is, at this point, if you go back and you look at the bids, okay?
Yes.
The same line item of work goes from the low in the 20s to up to $70,000. And this is like somewhere, excuse me, not at, so this is right somewhere in mid-range of that particular project. These folks have gone to a lot of work to get this put together, to get this done. I don't necessarily believe that we're going to receive any additional benefit from this. I think we're middle of the road pricing on that right now. It may seem like a lot to us, but there are a lot of things involved in it that need to be done.
Well, the purpose of us going with the specification, and, you know, these bidders, we had 2 addendums on this, and all of these bidders acknowledged the addendums as well. Gives us an apples to apples comparison. Now we're starting to change things, and I feel like if we do that, we're gonna open ourselves up for some challenges.
Well, the other issues are gonna have to completely change the
We're only talking about
SAD.
one bidder here. I feel like what you're referring to is an additional addendum that would restart the bid process effectively.
And it would also change the SAD role if everything changes. They are the low bidder on the project. There may be some other, if you start doing à la carte, you could find out, you could sit there and say, well, this guy can do this, and this guy can do this, and this guy can do this, and this guy can do that.
We're not in this business.
And we're not in this business. We've contracted this to be as cost-effective to that group as possible. And out of the 7 bids, Mr. Lilly, 6 or 7, I think there was?
7 bids.
7 bids. This was the contractor that was chosen. And there's been conversation with the association. They seem to be comfortable with it. Township entrusted Mr. Potter to run this. I am not going to second guess him. He is our DPS director, and I will go along with what he has to say in this particular case.
All right, but you're asking this board to vote, so we all have the same
I
voice
understand
you
that.
have, so let's air the differences. Let me ask another question, Mr. Potter. Is this a unit price contract or a lump sum project?
It's a unit price contract.
Okay, then the same argument goes. If these unit prices change dramatically, it's going to change the entire process. And so we're asking them to go on the as-built unit prices, not the lump sum bottom line. So if we remove trees from the contract, we're saving the applicant's money and reducing the cost of the contract. Your argument then is, well, then we have to rebid everything. Well, it's not correct. If we remove some items from this, it's a unit-based contract, it's not a lump sum contract. All right?
Okay.
So I'm just asking that the staff get some advice from a tree company and from this contractor and see if there can't be something worked out. I'm not convinced, quite frankly, that there are 54 trees that need to be removed from that site yet. So if we take some of those out of the contract, we're reducing the cost of the construction.
I have a question.
Mr.
Have a
Ruggles.
comment. Yeah, I agree. I mean, everything else that they provided us as far as quotes, I don't have an issue with, but I think there's substantial cost savings just at spending some time looking at that tree. I mean, those are, robbery prices, just straight up being gouged. I'm not gonna go along with that.
Well, like I say, I'm not in the tree business, so I appreciate your comments.
Well, I'm pretty familiar with it,
so,
so I
you
can
know,
tell you
if
that
you're
that's
more-
just obnoxious. You know, I mean, there is plenty of companies out there that are gonna do much better than this. So if that's what the board would like, I mean, to spend some time looking into that, there's a lot of money that these people could be saved, so.
And so, as I was trying to say before I got cut off, I think it's worth exploring that as well. It's, as Mr. Powell said, we can approach them and ask them, are they willing to take that out? So I don't think it hurts to explore to ask that if it saves our residents money.
That delay, this, how much will this delay it, Aaron?
It will delay it.
And it will cost money because of the notices that went out for the special assessment roll confirmation, the publication costs.
All these
Because
costs.
the roll, which it comes next, is based on these numbers.
Okay,
Okay.
let's hold on that just a second, and I apologize, Counselor, and I know you are never used to me challenging you on this. The next item is gonna be on the lump sum price that's quoted on here. So if the estimate on the number of yards of material that's gonna be removed is a great deal higher than that, it's gonna change the numbers in the SAD as well. That's what all the contingency is about. And so if we leave it the way it is, with the contingency in there, and the price comes down, and we're able to save that money, and it's within 5% or 10%, and I forget whether it, then it can be refunded back to the homeowner. So we don't have to change anything. We can still continue with the SAD. We can confirm the roll, and we can confirm the roll, and yet the project can still go forward even if we save them money.
Could come in less.
I would only
Correct.
just want to caution you, and I didn't see this contract, so I'm speaking just general contract
Right.
principles. They've essentially made you an offer, and if you don't accept it, you are making them a counter offer, which they can then reject.
Or we can just accept the unit pricing on everything else.
I didn't see the contract, so I,
Can we listen to our engineer? Because they did draft this. I'd like to kind of hear
Mr.
some.
Lufkin?
By all means.
Yeah, no.
He needs a mic, I think,
Yep.
for the.
Step out, you sit here.
Oh,
We'll just move up to the chair.
You are, Mike.
yeah, I'm Mike Lufkin with Johnson Anderson. Yeah, this is a unit price contract, and I know through this process that changes are going to need to be made to the plan, and we're fully aware that. I mean, actually, just within the last week and a half, a change has come up that we know we're going to have to modify the limits of our grading and tree removal. So our full intent was to kind of work with the contractor, try to limit the amount of trees that are removed and shift things around, but it's going to be an on-site effort to meet with the contractor and paint off the trees that really need to be removed. So, yeah, there's opportunities to save some of the trees like that. I don't know about splitting it up between a different contractor because that creates a lot of conflict with, working with one contractor to try to accomplish this goal, so.
We're not talking about a large job here, though, right? I mean, it's 50 trees-ish. It might be less.
Yeah, we got,
The engineer does the marking anyways, right?
we will be out, we'll be out there directing them on what trees and which areas. We'll probably do a perimeter of what we're talking about, so. But yeah, just within the last week and a half, we've become aware of a septic field that might be in close proximity to this, so we do need to shift our area of work away a little bit, which might actually give us an opportunity to save some of the trees that we were gonna pull out previously.
Mr. Roman, you had a call.
Just a comment. I think by pulling out the trees to the low bid, you actually penalize that contractor, though. Yes, and I don't know, what their bid theory is, but if you take the trees away, and that was their bread and butter, they may very well walk away. If they do, your next low bidder is more money, and their tree removal cost is significantly lower, $27,000. So, my own opinion is you go with the low bidder. It's a package deal, and just let them do everything. They're responsible for everything. Once you bring another tree contractor in, TSP could be unhappy with the job that they did, and now you've complicated the project.
Good?
I'm good, thanks.
Mr. Powell?
Okay, and I'm saying we can speculate all day, but until we ask the contractor, we don't know for sure. We can speculate that they decide tomorrow they're not gonna do it, and we're gonna go forward things. Just ask the contractor whether or not they would
Well,
allow
I
us to
still want to
do
move
that.
this forward.
And that's the plan, and I thought that's what I established. I would have been very disappointed in our engineer if he said, no, the unit prices are exactly what they are here, and there are not going to be any changes. So the changes he makes in the field, it's a very normal contract. The same if. What if TSP says, too many changes, I'm sorry, I'm not going to go forward. Then we're back exactly where you're speculating might happen now. Please, just be wise. Let the engineer make the changes to the field. The engineer established these quantities,
Correct.
not the contractor. So we're not going to hold the contractor responsible for the engineer's estimates. We're modifying it. We're adding in here contingencies to be able to account for that, whether they're higher or lower. I can't even imagine why we wouldn't ask the contractor what his feeling would be if we removed the trees from the contract.
Well, we're free to do that. What I don't want to do is slow this process down.
Why would we do that?
No, I don't think
I just want to make sure that's clear,
Yeah.
that's all.
Absolutely.
That's my only concern as well. I mean, these folks have been working on this for a long time.
Oh, yeah, should not be slowed down, but we should be able to save them some money if we can.
And look into it. It can be looked at as part of
Yeah.
this motion. Okay. Any other further questions from the board? Okay. If you want to make an amended motion?
Has a motion already been made?
No, I'll make a motion with an amendment to include that.
My
as contract.
motion, I made a motion, but.
Oh, it wasn't
my vote
seconded.
died
It wasn't
from lack of a
seconded,
second, so you go ahead and make another motion.
All right, then, Mr. Supervisor, I move that the township award the bid for the Settlers Point Storm Sewer Water Basin Project to TSP with the estimated construction price of $128,820. No, let's make it $130,000, subject to the actual units that are as built in the field, and that staff or the engineer approach TSP regarding their allowance of the tree removal to be removed from their contract. And if they don't, then the contract stands.
I have a motion. I have
I'll support that.
amend.
You
He made the motion, mine died.
I have a motion. I
I'll
have
support
support. All in favor?
Wait, can't we talk about this?
No.
The neighborhood, the people who are paying the bill can't have comments?
I'm not going there right now with this because we are trying to keep moving this forward, and
Your public hearing starts in the next
your
item.
public hearing will be here in a minute, okay, so hang on.
This is pending a couple of the next item.
So, not at this point, sir, okay? Okay.
Can we vote?
We got to vote.
Yeah, we just voted.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, thank you. Okay, now we're gonna move where you're gonna be able to say something. This is 11A, it's a public hearing with resolutions, a public hearing regarding the confirmation of assessment role for Settlers Point Stormwater Detention System restoration. The resolution number 19-011 to confirm a special assessment role for Settlers Point Stormwater Detention System restoration. At this moment, I would like to make a motion to open the public hearing. You want a roll call vote for that, Counselor?
Yes.
Of course you do. We'll take a roll call
Have a
vote.
support.
To have support, I beg your pardon? Mr. Powell, did you say support? I thought I heard support from over here.
Yeah, Terry's
Support.
got me down.
Okay. Michael, support. Roll call vote?
Mr. Cole,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly, yes, yes. Mr. Roman,
Yep.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Scott Ruggles,
Yes.
Mike Paul.
Yes.
Okay. At this time, anyone from the public that would like to speak on this matter is welcome to come up. You have to identify yourself for the recorder.
John Cole, lot 22, Settlers Point. So, right now I don't have a real strong fuzzy feeling that Mr. Potter's acting on the best behalf of my subdivision. I'll start with that. Number two, Mr. Supervisor, you were totally wrong when you gave your estimates of how much the tree removal was for them. You said it was a low of, they were among the lowest, they're the third highest.
No, I said
for
there's a
tree
low
removal.
and a high.
Yeah, but you said 20,000 was the low, and there's 28, 33, 31, 20, and then 42, okay?
And 63.
Yeah, so anyways, now, when do we find out what trees are being removed? Because I'm really struggling with you guys taking 52 trees out to fix a detention pond.
This is public comment. This isn't a
So,
question.
okay,
and
so,
answer.
well, great, okay. Did it not bother the engineer or Mr. Potter that the company that you guys have already selected and voted on, so we have no choice in the matter, had the second lowest bid for excavation, which is, I think, the most critical part of this project, is excavating out detention pond number one. They had the second lowest by a long shot. That didn't bother you, though. So what recourse do we have other than just, here, take my money? Because at this point, I feel like you guys have robbed us. I really do. I thank you very much, Scott, for supporting this stupid bid on these tree removals. That's just absolutely stealing from us, and we have no say in it. So nobody's going to answer any questions? Is that how this process works? All I do is talk and...
Public comment.
We're not allowed to talk during public comment.
Okay.
Anyone else have a comment?
Myself wanna say anything?
Anyone else have a comment? Like to speak?
I would like
Joe Coles from 8185 High Point Trail, and I concur with Mr. Cole here. I myself deal with a lot of suppliers. I get contracts, see them, do them. Wouldn't surprise me. I'm glad the board, I'm glad you gentlemen stepped up.
And Liz.
And Liz, thank you. Sorry, Liz. Wouldn't surprise me. The bidder just knows that they've got it, and they're just going to say no. But I appreciate the effort. I think 40,000 is ridiculous. I think they're contracting it out. Maybe they're padding it. I totally disagree that it's going to be this mayhem of an issue to have a separate contractor do trees. This is not rocket science, right? We're not putting new roofs on or new buildings together. It's trees, right? And we can get an expert that does it probably a lot better than what they can do it. But I do appreciate the board stepping up and really looking at that. Hopefully we can get this, because it's money out of our pocket. It's a lot of money, right? So, thank you.
Anyone else?
Bill Thomas, 8180 High Point Trail. On behalf of the board, we thank you people for taking this project from us. There's no way that we could have collected the money from the residents and gotten it done. People are forgetting the fact that somebody's got to go out door to door, pounding, trying to get people to pay up before we could make these repairs. And you're going to go in and make the repairs for us, and we thank you for it.
Thank you, sir.
Rick Brown, 8159 High Point Trail. When we started this program with Mr. Potter and then subsequently came here, I don't know, it's been 3 or 4 months now. One of the things that we asked more than any was that we look at scope, because there were a lot of concerns that taking this thing and redoing it back to what was envisioned to be, I'll call it perfect as opposed to functional,
be reviewed, and that we try to minimize scope because the costs seem to be extreme. For 33, now 37 homeowners to deal with a project of this magnitude is pretty extreme. It'd be nice if we were a 250-person sub, so this thing could be divided a little bit more reasonably amongst homeowners. The one thing that hasn't happened is this: is I don't feel until tonight, and I really appreciate the comments that were made, to try and temper or control some of the scope and some of the costs associated with this thing. I worked in the automotive purchasing activity for 30 years. We negotiated contracts after they were bid. We talked to suppliers. We tried to get the best deal we could absolutely give. Just because the bids came in didn't mean that was the end of the story. And I'm disappointed that there isn't more of a process or an activity at this point that now has been discussed that would allow for banter, especially in the case of something like the trees. I mean, and he may say I was lowest on excavation. Well, God bless him. That's what he felt he needed for that. But I think telling us a provider that you're way out of line on something else, and if you can't become more reasonable in your costing for that part of it, we think we can do it cheaper. I don't think that's unreasonable, and I appreciate the fact that it was put in there. But that's the one part of this process that I felt has been missing, and maybe that's the government way. Maybe that's the way government does its bids, and it's so you open them all in the same time, and you pick a guy and you go and you're done. It's certainly not the way industry does it, and it's certainly not the best way to control costs. So.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else at this time? This time I'll take a motion, make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close public hearing.
With your support?
Support.
Support from Mr. Ruggles. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're now out of public hearing. Okay, so the resolution is to confirm the special assessment rule. Janine, do you have anything to add?
Not unless you have any questions.
Well, at the moment, I do not, but we need to talk about the amount of the contract, the amount of the assessment, if there's any contingencies. No?
The roll is what was on file before this meeting, and everybody had an opportunity to come and get the roll. You're here just to confirm that roll. Otherwise, you do a new roll, you send out new notices, and you have another public hearing.
Understood. Okay. Mr. Powell?
And I agree with what our attorney just said. The concern that I have, unless I'm reading this wrong, Mr. Potter and Janine, that the assessment is estimated at $160,718.75, when that doesn't even give us any contingency at all. That doesn't give us 3%, 5%, or 10% contingency. And we just identified the fact that the contract is a unit price contract, and unless it was the units were really estimated high, maybe Mike, our engineer, how are we going to determine the cubic yardage that is the contract subject to? Is that going to be as-built survey afterwards, or are we going to measure the truckloads as they leave the site?
The intent is for an as-built survey afterwards. We surveyed the property before, and we're going to try to calculate the volume that's achieved afterwards and take a delta.
So right now, we have a contract, and we don't have any contingency for any extras at all, from the engineer, from the contractor, for anyone, the way that it has been worded. I was personally going to say we ought to have the 10% contract. In a loose contract or in a loose project like this, I personally am very concerned. We authorize this contract and he starts. What do we do when it comes in $20,000 over budget?
Well, the option that we have with any special assessment district is we can reassess whatever the differences are. That's what the law provides for.
But we have to hold a public hearing again and go through the...
Depends on the percentage of overage.
And we've been through that before, and it's not a pleasant experience. And I thought we had kind of agreed that we would never have a contract again without contingencies, because we always get caught flat-footed when we do.
I must admit that is true. I do agree with you. So was a contingency built into that? Mr. Potter?
Yeah, so Mike and I did talk about contingency on this one, and we discussed the amounts of the contingency. We felt like there was enough flexibility in this. And like we said, we already have identified, you know, a possible septic field in the area. So we felt like there was some flexibility there that would allow us to accomplish field changes and such. The amount of the contingency would, that, you know, we looked at 10% actually as the first thing that popped to my mind. And what we thought was, you know, that was below what we would have to have another public hearing for reassessment. And we felt like that this would be the right place to have that discussion. Because the downside of having that contingency built in is that these folks don't get it back for 10 years. Once it's wrapped up into the SAD, they're not going to get refunded until the SAD is expired 10 years from now. And some of these folks may not even be the homeowners at that time. And that then would go back to whoever owns the property
At that time?
at that time. And so I personally was trying to tie up as little amount of their money as possible.
And it makes sense,
And,
because
you know, you're right, it is uncomfortable, as this process. You know, we've been asked to do this by their board. I think the township as a whole would have much appreciated that they were able to handle this process on their own. Unfortunately, that just hasn't been the case. And so, you know, we felt like we'd bring it up with the board and, you know, let you folks, you're the ones that take the heat for a reassessment, so. I'd
no
like your
good deed
opinion
goes
on-
unpunished, right?
Exactly.
The size of, yes, Mr. Roman.
Council, you're saying we cannot change the roll without delaying this?
Yes, particularly if your number's gonna increase, because you have, what, Janine, the process that you did, you published in the paper, that if anybody wants to protest the amount, the dollar amount that they will be assessed, they have to come to this meeting or write a letter in advance. Did you also send letters to everybody with the dollar amount that's gonna be assessed? Yes. So, yeah, you'd have to have another public hearing and notices again to increase that amount.
If I could ask council a question, and it's just kind of a point of interest. In any SAD, I don't believe we have to wait till the expiration date of the SAD to refund funds. That's just the legal time when we must reassess and give back any money after 10 years. We can give that, if the project is over with in 1 year, we can give back any extra. We don't have to wait 10 years to give back the extra, right?
I gotta be honest with you, I'm not sure. It's always been my understanding that it's at the end of the term of the SAD, if there's a surplus of more than 5%, it's returned.
It's required by law to do it then.
Yeah, I
Correct.
can't answer,
Okay.
I can't
We have
answer.
we have a case in point. I
Oh.
think Mr.
Well,
Roman's gonna bring it up.
let me just comment, you guys, there's a missing piece that has to do with collections on that SAD. And I would agree with what you're saying, if all of the SAD money was collected before 10 years is up, absolutely. But if not, you don't know that you're gonna get that money, you can't refund.
I see.
We had a utility, if you remember, a utility project we had here just to the west of here where the sewer line, I may have this mixed up. One of them went over cost, one of them went under cost.
Right.
And when you washed the two of them out, it was almost just that, a wash.
Right.
Okay? But under the statute, we're not allowed to refund that until the SAD is termed out.
Okay.
Done and complete.
Darn.
I can't say what, I can't off the top of my head
Yeah,
say
we
what
can
the law
study that.
says, but I think,
Yeah.
but from a practical standpoint, I
That was
think
a good
Mike's point
point.
is valid.
Correct.
I personally, I don't wanna hold this up. I I mean, I would be apt to just go with the 160, as long as the residents know that if there's cost overruns, there will most likely be a reassessment.
As in any other project
Yeah.
that's done.
You need a motion.
We need a motion to approve the resolution to establish the,
Well, I'll make a motion to approve.
Sorry, excuse me, before you do, could we maybe discuss, what is the percentage of the admin fee, Janine, that you have included in this?
The resolution says 7.
7%?
7%?
You guys voted.
Okay, that's part of that sliding scale that we present?
It's a sliding scale. A few years ago, we made a straight 7% for everybody. The board voted on that.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Mr. Roman?
A motion to approve resolution 19-011, resolution confirming special assessment role for the SAD designated Settlers Point stormwater detention system restoration.
Yes, on resolution.
Mr. Clerk, will you roll call vote? Oh, I beg your
Someone
pardon.
support
Yeah,
it?
you've got, need support yet. I beg your pardon. I'm sorry. We have motion, looking for support.
Can you repeat the motion, please?
Motion to approve resolution 19-011, resolution confirming the SAD role for the SAD designated Settlers Point stormwater detention system restoration.
Thank you.
Looking for support.
Support.
Support from Mr. Ruggles. All in favor? We have a roll call vote.
Roll call
I'm
vote.
just like slipping here. I'm getting tired. Okay, roll call vote.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Scott Ruggles,
Yes.
Mike Powell,
If it weren't for the urgency of time on this, my vote would be different. It's not worth delaying this project over the future, so yes.
Andrew Voorhees,
Yes.
Mike Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes no. Mr. Colwell,
I vote yes with comment that we need to make sure that in the future on these projects, we have as much of this covered so that we keep the impact to the residents as minimalized as possible. I do know that our engineers and our DPS director try to do a really good job, and they try to be very conscientious of all those things. But the difficulty is there is only so much time, and when we are asked to perform a task that a community is unable to do, and we are trying to be a benefit to them and be of service to them, and we do have only a certain amount of time to work on all these different things that come through here. And that's just the reality of what it is. We have limited staff and limited opportunity, but we try to do the best that we possibly can with what we have to work with. I vote yes. Mr. Lilly.
just like to make a comment. You know, originally, when the Township Board started these special assessments, it was based on the fact that it was up to the organizations or residents to come to the board to ask for help for financing. And it always has been told to everybody that this is not the cheapest way to do things. You can use your own financing cheaper, you can go to the bank cheaper, but our process is to go out to bids. Now, this is not the first time that we went out to bids and then everybody got to be critical, and I can remember a garbage issue that was the same way. Everybody got critical about prices because everybody heard we can start saving money, and it ended up into a fiasco. And ultimately, lawsuits down the road, but did not include us. But I'm kind of a little bit taken back when the people that are asking for help criticize Aaron for a job that he's done and done well. He's done it well within the means of what he has accomplished here. And this has never meant, and never been the way to pick items out of a contract and say we want to pick and choose to do this. Mike, you can do that. I can do that as a private individual. Rick, you can do that. but we're not permitted to do that because they call it conflict of interest when it comes to the board for us to start doing that. So really kind of taken back a little bit that this project has such urgency. However, there's still so much dissension in that, and you know, going out for bids and whatever. If I was a contractor bidding for White Lake Township, I wouldn't even bother with this, because we've done this a number of times to accept the low bid and then criticize people or not let them do what they bid. And it's always been that way on every bid. You can go across the board and pick and choose your amounts to do. So I just, like I say, really, we should stick to our guns and just tell people, go find your own financing, because it's just, these have never been pleasant for any of us board members.
That's why we get the big bucks, Terry, you know, to help the residents.
All the
It's
big
not meant to
bucks,
be
right.
pleasant for us, we're
Yeah.
serving the residents.
Right.
Thank you, Mr.
So-
Lilly, I appreciate that.
Thank you. I just wanted to make that comment.
No, thank you, Mr. Lilly, I do appreciate it. Okay, item 11B, public hearing regarding establishment of... Oh, I beg your pardon.
So everybody voted, and they can vote. Just wanted to make it clear for the record.
Good? Okay, all right. 11B, public hearing regarding establishment of a special assessment district for emergency sewer connections, 2019-01. The resolution 19-012 establish and maintain a special assessment district to pay costs associated with therewith and to approve the plans and estimates of costs therefore to be known as emergency sewer connections 2019-01.
To make a motion to open public hearing.
Motion, looking for support?
Support.
I have support. Roll call vote.
Mr. Colwell?
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees?
Yes.
Liz Smith?
Yes.
Scott Ruggles?
Yes.
Mike Paul?
Yes.
Very good. We are now open to public comment or at our public hearing for the establishment of the special assessment district for emergency sewer connections. Seeing as there's no comment from the public, I will close. I need a motion to close.
Motion to close public hearing?
I need support. Support from Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
We're now closed.
Make a motion to approve the emergency sewer connections resolution 1901, consisting of 4 parcels. Total cost is $74,979.98, and final hearing will be on May 14th, 2019.
The resolution number was 012, right?
Yes.
012. Yeah, 012, Terry. Make a motion, have support.
I'll support that.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Colwell?
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees?
Yes.
Liz Smith?
Yes.
Scott Ruggles?
Yes.
Mike Paul?
Yes.
Okay, moving along.
Well, that was easy.
Yeah, that one was easy, okay. Well, we've done that one a couple of times before already, so we got warmed up on that. Thank you, Janine. Item 12, resolution 19-013, declaring its intention to establish a special assessment district known as Burgess Bay Aquatic Weed Control and Lake Improvement. Questions from the board? This is something that's done on a pretty regular basis, Janine, right?
Yep, every 5 years.
5 years. So we get to take care of their weeds. So over on Burgess Bay on Cedar Island.
Can I ask a question? This is a township board initiated SAD, correct?
No, they have 51%.
I'm sorry, what?
They have 51% of the signatures, it says.
Right, well,
Oh.
they, in their area, they do this little, go ahead, Janine, explain.
I thought Mike meant it's not a lake board, right?
Correct.
Yeah, it's not a lake board.
Okay, thank you.
No, it's not Lake Board.
Thank you.
So, yes, Mr. Lowell.
Make a motion to approve resolution 19013 to declare its intention to finance Burgess Bay weed control and lake improvement. This is an intention resolution. Set the public hearing date for May 14th, 2019.
I have a motion looking for support. I have support from Mr. Powell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, ayes have it, thank you. Resolution 19-008, approving 2019 West Nile Virus Prevention Program. Mr. Lilly.
Make a motion to approve the West Nile virus reimbursement request, Resolution 19008, in the amount of $5,526.80.
$5,520 and
$5,526.80.
It's a lot of bug killer. Okay, I have a motion. Looking for support.
Support. Question.
Support, but question, Mr. Roman.
What is the motion for? To receive reimbursement?
Seek reimbursement.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Seek reimbursement from the county. Andrew is supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you. Resolution, item C, Resolution 19-010, approve a Marine Patrol Services contract agreement with Oakland County Sheriff's Department and approve agreement between the township and associations. We go every 3 years, I believe, on this. This is an agreement that goes between the township and the county, that we act as basically the fiduciary for any assessments that are set up, that we can pay the sheriffs so they don't have to go after anybody else. And this is what they require in order for us to do this. This is going to become in two parts. Mr. Lilly showed when the documents came over. Would you care to explain, Mr. Lilly?
Really, there's two attachments to the resolution. Part of the resolution, or the main part, is an agreement between White Lake Township and the Oakland County Sheriff's Department. And really what they're calling Part B is an agreement between White Lake Township and any lake association or whatever for the marine services. And part of that agreement is that they must post some money with White Lake Township and get a signed agreement by the supervisor. And I will go ahead on the first part, is to make a motion to approve Resolution 010 for an agreement with the Oakland County Sheriff's Department to provide marine patrol services for the township of White Lake.
I have a motion. Looking for support.
Support.
I have support by Mr. Ruggles. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Second part.
The second part appears, and I'm not sure, but appears that there's some kind of agreement in the making between White Lake Township and the Pontiac Lake Association for marine services in the amount of $2,160 for the dates May 24th to September 2nd. And part of my motion is to approve what appears to be an agreement and authorize the supervisor to sign. But again, I want to question why the agreement was not signed ahead of time, and the front of it was really never completed. So I'm questioning whether there's an actual agreement or not. But if in fact it is the makings of the agreement, authorize you to move ahead with that.
And establish a trust and agency account.
Yes.
For that.
Yep. Yes.
So we get the money up front.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
I'll support
That's a
that.
motion.
Support. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
We're from Pontiac Lake,
Yes.
Yes.
and I apologize, Mr. Lilly, that I didn't get that to your office.
Well, it's your fault.
Yeah.
Look, everyone, it's her. It's her fault. The board didn't do anything wrong.
No, it is my fault.
If you're, are you new to this?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. No harm, no folly.
Yeah.
You know, we have to make our agreement with the sheriff's department. That's just something we have to do every so many years. And then that just kind of coattailed in, and for some reason, it just was just kind of odd the way that it was set up, but understood.
As I indicated earlier, that sometimes when this agreement comes to the township, the second part is actually an attachment, or what they're considering Part B, but really there's two separate agreements.
Question. This might not be the right time to ask this. Has there ever been thought of making like a township-wide assessment, since more and more lakes are trying?
Wrong place to ask that question. But it's not gonna happen, because you can only have an assessment that benefits the users. And the people that are off water are not the users. Only riparians and even questionable riparian right. But that's a lake board question, of which I'm sure I'll see you at a lake board meeting. Okay, thank you, okay? She's taught me well. Next, we're good there? Okay. Next item, item 12D. Resolution 19-014, supporting legalization, allowing township boards the option to have elected offices appear as nonpartisan on the ballot. I'd like to have maybe a little discussion on that. I'm not quite sure I feel real comfortable with that.
I'm with you on that.
Terry's jumping in his seat.
I just, originally, all you have a copy of what we were sent by MTA. And if you strictly want to go by the recommendations or what the good points and the bad points are, our system of Republican and Democrat have always worked well for us. And I know times are changing and whatever, but to me, the worst part of the whole process is, particularly for township elections, is we become nonpartisan. We become down at the bottom of that ballot. And if they have a long ballot, we're on the backside now of the ballot instead of where people notice. And you can tell by the way people vote that when you get down to the bottom of that second page, most of the time you don't wear yourself out. So a lot of people won't even vote that. But this puts everybody on the spot, and particularly me as a clerk, to try to not favor any party, just to do my job. So I'm not receptive to making a decision on this. In fact, it would be my recommendation from my point of is to table this for a later date, or to simply respond that we have no comment.
Are you
I'm
making
gonna
that a
take a neutral
motion?
position, the same as what MTA would be, but that's only my own opinion, and like I say, I know it's a controversial issue that's gonna be discussed everywhere.
Is that a recommendation or are you making a motion?
My recommendation, if I'm gonna make a motion, it'd be to,
Would you like to make a
table
motion?
this issue.
Would you like to make a motion?
I would be happy to make a motion to table, but I wanted to hear, I kinda jumped into this thing, but I'd like to hear what the rest of my
Before you
board
make the
members.
tabling motion, because we can't have any discussion if you make that tabling motion and
Correct.
it's supported.
Well, you can, since when?
So, that being said, how do we even hold a primary if all our positions are non-partisan?
It contradicts itself, doesn't it? This is the quandary under how things are right now, and I'm not comfortable with this at all.
They don't set all the criteria, Mike. They give you bits and pieces of it. Then when you say yes, then they determine your criteria. And this is happening across the board for the clerks for the last 5 years. They want to know your opinion, but then when you give it to them, all these crazy issues come up, and it involves more work for the clerks, not for the legislature that's making all these.
And we confuse the public
these
too.
issues, and it confuses the public as well. So, I don't know. To me, I don't want to address the issue. I want to be a clerk. I want to stay in a position I have to deal with Republicans and Democrats. People have always vote whoever you want to vote for anyway. So it's
I'm surprised
a difficult situation for me.
I'm surprised MTA doesn't have a position on this, honestly. I read this thing a couple times thinking maybe I'm gonna catch it, and, yeah.
Well, I guess I thought that MTA provided this draft resolution, and I thought that the resolution was to either indicate support or opposition to pending
That's where-
legislation.
That's where I was gonna go.
That's what it's
Why
for,
don't
it's
we just deny it?
Yeah, we can.
You can express opposition or support.
Well, that's what they want to know from our input, whether they're going to support or whatever the
So
legislation.
MTA hasn't taken a position because they're waiting for the locals to
Yes,
decide.
yes.
Well, why don't we make it clear instead of tabling it then?
Yep, absolutely.
Deny it.
I was just asked my opinion, Mike.
Yeah.
I just. Then-
Mr. Supervisor, I'll initiate a discussion here. I move,
Did Mr.
I'm
Lil
sorry?
withdraw his motion?
it wasn't a motion, I
Didn't
don't
make
think,
one.
was it?
Oh.
It was a-
Right? I
Opinion?
wasn't sure, so I was asking, so I don't think he did.
So I move to, okay. I move to deny the resolution allowing township boards to deny the township boards the option to have elected officials appear as nonpartisan on a ballot.
So you would insert in paragraph 2 of the resolution that the township board is on record in, and then you check off the opposition part of that.
Opposition to the legislation. That is correct. Thank you.
That's much cleaner than the language.
Yeah.
And then
If
it's
that-
asking for a
if
roll
that's
call.
what we say, then we're saying no township board can have the option to use nonpartisan. Right?
What you're saying is the pending
not in
legislation that would prohibit, that would allow township boards the option to have nonpartisan elections, that you're not in support of that pending legislation.
Correct. That was my motion.
We're telling boards, you have to have partisan.
Just
elections
remain
only.
the way they are.
Okay, yep.
I'll support Mr. Powell's motion.
Motion and support.
This resolution calls for a roll call vote though, so how do, because we're not
resolutions.
entertaining the resolution.
All resolutions do.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Rick, who made the motion and support?
I made the motion.
Support.
Andrea supported it.
Thank you.
Are we voting?
Mr. Lilly? You do a roll call vote?
Oh, I'm sorry.
See, you can tell when it's getting late. That's
Yeah,
okay.
you're right.
I'm not the only one, I'm glad, at least I know that.
Scott Ruggles,
Yes.
Mike Powell,
No.
Yes.
We're voting no on the
No.
resolution,
We have to
correct?
vote no.
Or we're voting on our motion?
The
Voting.
resolution has been amended by Mr. Powell, where he's checking off the portion that says you're opposing
Okay.
the legislation.
Yes is the opposing.
Yes
is the
this is
opposing.
opposite.
So you want to vote yes?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just be sure.
do a negative.
I think I'm right.
Yes,
Negative is
it's a
positive.
negative, yeah. Don't-
Mr. Ruggles?
Just tabled it.
Everyone else is confused.
No, I-
Sorry. Just wanna be sure.
Mr. Ruggles, you said yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly is yes, Mr. Colwell.
Yes. Yes means no.
And what about me, Mr. Clerk?
I want to tell a story about it.
Voorhees, check off Voorhees.
Yeah, you didn't say
A
anything.
long time ago, your father,
Oh,
we had a zoning board of appeals issue, came to the board, and somebody made a negative motion.
I remember that.
Made a negative motion, and everybody got confused, particularly your dad.
Dad.
And they lost 4-3.
Awesome.
And your dad said, well, wait a minute, I wanted them to have that, what happened?
It
So
happens.
we had to re-vote again because of that issue, so
How it was worded.
you never want to make a negative motion.
Andrea, did you vote yet?
Yeah, indirectly, yes. I said yes.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay, that one's, that's kind of an odd thing, I'm not real happy with that. Okay. Item 12E, Resolution 19-015, allowing charitable gaming license for the library at their event. This is our resolution that we have, which approves this part of the application, which from this point does not mean it's approved, but it goes from here to the state, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken.
It's just it's a formality for the state that it comes through our board.
Yeah, pretty much what we do like for St. Pat's and a variety of other places, and we do this type of stuff. Mr.
I'd like to make a few comments.
Yes, Mr. Lloyd.
Along with this application that must be submitted to the liquor control, or I should say the charitable organization of the state, part of their requirements are the Friends of the Library must have liability insurance. Now, I'm not sure that anybody knows the answer whether they have
My understanding they do.
liability, but that is going to be, if this is granted, then that liability policy
They'll have to produce
is
a
going to be
policy.
necessary for the board
Sure,
action.
you're talking liquor liability, correct?
No, just if
Okay.
they have to have regular
Charitable-
liability.
charitable,
This is just charitable gaming.
Okay.
now being that they're a 501
C3.
free, see, is that right? That insurance for them is extremely difficult to get sometimes. But when we talked to the insurance man today, they just wanted to clarify the fact that even if this was amended for the library to do this, the library is still on the township policy.
It's not the library, this is just for the Friends. This is not the library requesting it. They're separate
Oh, I
entities.
didn't say that.
Yeah.
What I said is that if it was, that they are still on the township policy. So just want to make it clear that I don't mind making a motion to support this resolution, but the insurance policy is an absolute must that it be furnished as soon as possible. So I'll make a motion to
Before you
approve
do,
resolution.
Terry, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
When would they have to submit that, that insurance certificate to the township?
Well, if we're going to approve this, I'm going to say it needs to be forthcoming.
Before you actually sign that?
As far as I'm
Permit?
concerned, I'm not going to sign this. Rick's going to, but I would assume that before the township let this go, that we want a copy of that
We
policy.
have evidence of coverage.
You asked for the clerk's signature, Terry.
So, okay.
Sorry.
Authorize the clerk. That's fine.
Oh, it does say that. Township, village, yeah.
I'm gonna want a copy of that policy.
That says clerk down there, yeah, it does.
So maybe I don't want to put you on the spot, Liz, but maybe you can help me understand a couple things. Besides the insurance, and you said that they have insurance,
It's my understanding they do.
and who then verifies the amount and what's covered in that insurance policy?
Well, we need to know that they have liability. It'd be a question of whether it's adequate or not, and that'll be up our liability carrier.
Our insurance carrier.
Okay. The next question I had, this is a private event in a publicly owned building?
So this, is my understanding, this, once it goes through, allows them so many times a year to be able to fundraise. So they're not looking just for one event, they're just looking to come up with the times, the Friends. They want to increase a couple different things so they are able to be a more active group.
And normally this has been done, and we've done this many times in the township, but it's always been a private venue in a private owned building, not a publicly owned building. So I guess my question is, since this building is publicly owned and a private event is being held in a publicly owned building, does that preempt the public from entering it?
I'm not the one to answer that.
Is that what they're paying for with the ticket? Is that a charge to enter or a charge to
No,
gamble?
This is like a $25 form that allows them to be able to have fundraisers and do whatever they
50-50 or
want for the
whatever it
rest of the year.
No,
yeah,
I-
this isn't just like specific to one event.
I understand that. I think Mr. Powell's talking about what they're gonna be doing. So they're charging, is it an entrance fee into a public building?
This has nothing to do with just one event. They just would like this licensing in general.
Understood.
Yeah.
And their first event is coming up, right, May 4th?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so is the ticket for entrance, or is it for activities?
The tickets for fundraising purposes.
Yeah, I think it's a donation.
Yeah. It's
You
for
have to have-
fundraising
Doing
purposes.
fundraising, I know.
Do you have to have one to get in?
So the question is, has the library decided and talked
I
to
think
their
we're
attorney
getting
or
off
whatever?
the topic of their gaming license. This is just a license in general. Like we do this for St. Pat's and other non-charitable organizations.
Okay, so let me
charitable
ask it
organizations.
differently then. When will the public entity give permission to use a public building? Who gives that permission to use a public building?
Our building inspector, I guess. I mean, I don't you're asking me questions that
Who
I
owns
don't
the
know.
building that it's gonna be held in? This next event?
The public. I mean, it's a public building, but I'm not sure what that has to do with this. If you want to speak directly to the Friends board, you can.
I'm just wondering who's approving the venue of where these are gonna be held? Where this
Well,
event's
their
gonna be held?
events might not always be held. This license goes to the Friends, not the library building. So their event might not always be held at the library. They could be having a book sale off-site or something else.
Raffle tickets.
Yeah.
Counselor, is there anything that you can add to this as to any limitation or
I
location?
I have never had to do anything when it comes to gaming licenses because usually the townships are not involved. Usually it's between the state and the applicant. So I really can't add anything to it. If the township has additional requirements.
I think this form just asks it to go through the township board as a formality. This is a state form.
Mr. Lilly?
Rick, I called the gaming division today, and from what I gained from them is this application is strictly a part of an application that requires the township board to approve prior to the rest of the application to be submitted to the gaming division for their permitting processes. The only thing that I learned from that and question that from the library's perspective and being held at the library, what the status of the insurance would be, whether the library held it, which the answer was is the library currently does not have their own insurance to cover this particular event, or question whether the 501(c) entity had insurance that is required.
So Terry, it sounds to me like you're not so concerned about approving this.
I'm not-
But now you're moving on to.
I'm
the
not
bigger-
concerning this, it's just the question of the insurance.
Right.
And if the insurance is gonna fall back on the responsibility of the township, then I think as a board, we need to talk about it. If it's, the insurance is through the Friends of the Library or the library itself to carry their own insurance, then we have no liability, so to speak, to do it. It's
So I
their
don't
building, their insurance, and whatever, so that would be my only concern. But this is supposedly a formality to get the process going.
So let me ask two questions, though, that are germane to this. How long, if we approve this tonight, is this for good for 100 years?
No, I think it's good for a year.
It's good for, it has a lifetime.
Yeah, it
I,
has
I
4
didn't,
years.
I didn't see that on there. And then my vote on this would be different if you were having it in a neighborhood next to somebody's house, a house in the middle of the neighborhood. My position would be different than it would be at the VFW hall, say. So it's kind of, if there's not an additional approval process on this, and you're saying there is an additional approval process approving the location that this is gonna be held at each time,
This
right?
application
That's
needs,
not, it's not each location. This license goes just to the Friends. And this is our board's only part in it is to approve this literally 1-page portion of it. I can't speak for the board and I can't speak for the Friends board, but it is my understanding each entity has their own insurance at this time. Which was completely irrelevant to this one piece of form, actually. But Terry, I mean, got a little off topic here.
This, this really just allows the Friends of the Library to do charitable gaming, raffle tickets, events at any location. It's not location specific or event specific, and it is, I believe it is a year.
Yeah, and
where you'd be authorizing it. Now, it sounds to me, based on this discussion, there are other ancillary issues that are kind of being
Yes. Mixed in.
mixed in with this resolution. And I think that's what's causing some of the confusion.
And at this time,
We
this is
should
the only
want them to
document
have
being-
this, like anybody that's out doing raffles, and any raffle, you're supposed to have this license. Like, this is a good thing that they're doing the right steps to cover and have the correct licenses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Roman.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 19-015, local governing body resolution for charitable gaming licenses for Friends of the White Lake Township Library.
Support.
I have motion, I have support.
question on motion.
Yes.
Are we gonna require the insurance?
It's not
I,
part of this.
I share your concern, Mr. Lilly, but this isn't site-specific. And I think if we're going to, if we have a question on something else, I think we have to approach it a little bit differently.
This is an event that's gonna be held at the library.
I
But
agree
this
with that.
license isn't for just one event.
I don't care
That's the
where
part
it-
we have
Yeah,
to
no,
get off.
I agree. They're going to, I'm going to say that we're going to have to,
Okay.
if it's held in, if this particular, how I would amend that motion. held in the library that they'll have to produce satisfactory.
Lisa's saying no.
Okay, I'll amend my motion and state that if the Friends of the Library are going to perform charitable gaming at the new library, they have to supply insurance, proof of liability insurance.
So I'm gonna withdraw my support because that's not part of this particular form, and I don't believe our council agrees with that thinking.
What, I mean, I could talk to you from liquor licensing perspective. If you attach any conditions to a resolution, it halts the process. I can't tell you if it would do the same with this gaming license.
Okay, then
I don't know.
I will revise my motion back to the original motion.
Thank you, and I will revise my support.
We need a roll call vote?
So generally, the rule is on resolutions, you should have a roll call vote unless everyone is in, the consensus is everyone's gonna approve it, it's not gonna be any issues. But to be safe, that's why we always generally do them. Do you have to? No. You can judge it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, we've done this before. We've done these before, and it's always been venue-specific and date-specific. Many places in the township we've done that for, but never a carte blanche, hold it any place you want, at anybody's basement you want, at any time you want, without some justification or some notification.
So it may be that the people who were applying was for just an event. But the license, the gaming license, does not cover just one specific event at one specific location. And I think that's why, we may not have seen it before where it's, but that's how the gaming licenses work.
From the state.
From the state. And if we have ordinances or have, the township has additional requirements, then you can require additional things, such as insurance. But if the state is this is really the state's thing.
Right.
And they want your feedback on approving the gaming license for this organization.
So let me ask council a question. If something terrible happens at one of these gaming events, the township won't be named at all, the state would be totally liable for it.
Oh, no.
Why?
Well, because you can get sued by anybody, anytime, you know that.
So then we should cover the township and ask for insurance, right?
I'm not disputing the fact that it's a very valid concern that maybe should be addressed. But, I mean, this is a separate issue. If you want to make another motion after you approve this, based on the event, then that's something that you can do. But this is, I think, should be treated separately.
I believe that.
Yeah, so we have a motion and support on the floor. So
And we're in discussion.
Okay, I didn't hear the
Mr.
discussion.
Lilly.
Thank you.
And again, I just want to clarify my position that this application is made out for the Friends of the Library, going to do a function in the new township library. If the Friends does not have insurance, liability insurance, the insurance will be then in the township name, because currently the policy for the library is with the township. That has not been changed over yet. Now, to me, the condition should be either part of this is either the Friends furnish insurance or the library furnishes insurance. I don't see why I'm gonna vote to go on the hook, take liability that I have to do that. I think it's reasonable request to put the liability on somebody else to do that at this particular point, and this is the point of the discussion. I'm just trying to relate to you what my concerns are to do that, because I'm not sure whether the Friends have adequate liability insurance for this event. This is an advertised event. It isn't something that's gonna happen maybe. It's going to happen at the new township library. At least one of them.
Right.
That draws my concern.
Terry, your conversation with I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Your conversation with the gaming board, did they indicate to you that they were gonna require as part of this approval process that the Friends of the Library provide insurance?
They didn't tell me what the rest of their requirements. This is just a one little piece of, supposedly, of an application.
Right.
I don't have the rest of the application. All I got is a partly filled out that the Friends of the Library
Because
are gonna do this.
the rest of the application is the Friends of the Library are responsible to fill it out. Our only job as the township board is to approve this one piece of the application. that's, otherwise we're overstepping into another board.
Except we have to understand what we're asking to have approved. I mean,
So-
otherwise, why even have us
It's
do
my
it?
understanding, and I'm not reading from the gaming right now, but it's my understanding this license is good for a year and it allows them like up to 12 events. It goes to the Friends, not the library, and that's it. They can do like a 50-50 raffle. They can do things like that.
There has to be some reason why the state asks us our permission. Otherwise, why not just give it to them and we don't even entertain it? So I have another question. Do we have in our files in the clerk's office the articles of incorporation of the 501c3 Friends of White Lake? How do we know that it's actually a legitimate organization that's legally established at the state level?
Because they are a 501c, and they do, it's my understanding, they have their own insurance right now. And the Friends president would have been here, except Mr. Colwell said that they didn't need to be here for this. So they would be happy to come and speak to our board about it. So they're already set up as a 501c, and it's my understanding that they have their own insurance. But that's irrelevant to this one piece of form.
So my original motion to ask them for their insurance, if they already have it, should be very easily to be here tomorrow. If the board approves this application. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for
Terry,
insurance for somebody else in a public
I
building.
agree with you, Terry, but I think I like Lisa's suggestion. I think,
I'm only voicing my opinion.
no, but I agree with your opinion. I think it's wise for us to, not muddy up the waters with the application to the state, but also that I would request the board to a motion that would require proof of liability insurance be provided to the township for any gaming event held on township property. Period. Period. So if they held it in that building or all across the street.
Separate motion.
Separate motion. And I would like to do that.
Motion, so that this is clear,
Separate.
please.
So I got a
Separate.
motion. Do I have support for this too?
Yes, I support it.
You support it. Okay, we have a motion, we have support.
And I asked for a roll call vote.
You asked for a roll call vote? Okay.
Repeat the motion.
Oh,
Motion to approve resolution 19-015, local governing body resolution for charitable gaming license for Friends of the White Lake Township Library.
we had motion from Mr. Roman, support from Ms. Smith. Roll call vote request?
Mr. Colwell?
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Andrea Voorhees? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Liz Smith?
Yes.
Oh, I almost got it. Scott Ruggles?
Yes.
Mike Paul?
Yes.
I would like to make a second motion in connection to this particular item, a motion that proof of liability insurance be provided to the township for any gaming event held on township property.
So it'd be a motion to require proof.
Require it
Motion to require.
as approved by our insurance carrier.
As approved by our insurance carrier.
I'll support that,
But-
Mr. Supervisor.
Can I just interject for 1 second? So, again, just remember that this is the Friends.
Yeah.
So they might, in the future, they could potentially not have the township's insurance. They can go seek whatever insurance company they want.
It doesn't matter.
It's fine.
I'm just letting you know, it's just Friends, it's not library.
Yeah, it's
Just so
fine.
we're clear on
Anything
that.
that happens on township property with a gaming license, it has to be some proof of insurance.
Okay.
Did you get all that the right way?
The right
You
way?
want to read that back?
Can I read it back?
Please.
Your motion was a motion to require proof of liability insurance as approved by insurance carrier, township's insurance carrier, to be provided to the township for any event to be held on township property.
Any event with the gaming or any event?
Any event, yeah.
Okay, clear. I'm good. I made the motion. I need support.
Support.
Support by Mr. Powell.
I'm gonna ask for a roll call vote.
Roll call vote.
Andrea Voorhees?
Yes.
Mike Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Colwell?
Yes.
Mr. Lillywelch, yes. Mr. Ruggles?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes, with comment. We should want to encourage people in the community to get proper licenses and follow the rules, so we shouldn't make it so hard on them. So yes, like we should want them to do the right thing. That's all they're trying to do.
But we want to cover the township residents.
That's
Right,
what
we want everyone to do the right thing, so
CY,
yes.
CY,
This one's a
what's it,
little bit
CYA?
different
CYA.
because
Yeah,
they're
CYA.
aware of an event on township property, and that's why this one had a little.
Caveat.
But yes, all the way around, everybody should do the right thing, yes.
Okay, moving along to item 12F, which is the resolution number 19-016, declaring May 12th through May 18th, 2019, a police week.
This is a tough one, man.
Yeah. Resolution of the Township Board of the Charter Township of White Lake declaring Police Week, May 12th through the 18th, 2019. Resolution 19-016. A resolution to declare May 12th through the 18th, 2019 as Police Week in the Charter Township of White Lake. The preamble and resolution was offered by Liz Smith as well as the board. Whereas in 1962, President John F. Kennedy proclaimed May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day and the calendar week in which May 15th falls National Police Week. Established by a joint resolution of Congress in 1962, National Police Week pays special recognition to those law enforcement officers who have lost their lives in line of duty for the safety and protection of others. And whereas the more than 800,000 law enforcement officers serving in the community across the United States includes the approximately 17,000 full-time uniform police officers in Michigan, and whereas members of law enforcement deserve the appreciation and respect of the people of Charter Township of White Lake, Michigan, for the merit, dignity, bravery, and reliability they exhibit each and every day. We must also honor the sacrifices made by families of police officers, and as each day they must face constant fear as their loved ones work to protect us. And whereas in 2018 alone, 163 enforcement officers were killed and many, many more assaulted in the line of duty across the country. The names of the dedicated public servants who made the ultimate sacrifice are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. And whereas Michigan Charter Township of White Lake, fallen officers have never been forgotten, nor will their service to their respective communities by choosing to commit themselves to law enforcement. These brave individuals answered the call for service and are willingly putting their lives in jeopardy. We commend them for recognizing service as a noble career and protecting the public safety, and also all of those who are serving without incident to date. And whereas Charter Township of White Lake, Michigan, and all Michigan citizens have turned to members of law enforcement for assistance and support in times of distress, whether they are coping with a personal crisis or struggling through civil disorder or natural disaster. Our communities rely on these courageous individuals when it is difficult to stand on our own, and we are indebted to the unwavering public service of our local and state police. We are indeed fortunate and grateful for the contributions of law enforcement officers to the people of this state. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this Township Board declares May 12th through May 18th, 2019 as Police Week in the Charter Township of White Lake, Michigan. We publicly salute the service of law enforcement officers in our community as well as those of our state and nation, and honor police who place their lives in the line of safety and security of the, and scrutiny sometimes too, and security of their communities. A vote for the foregoing resolution was taken, and as was follows.
Thank you for reading that with such vigor.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Supervisor,
yes.
I have a question for you,
Yes,
and I
sir.
know this is a resolution, so we have to have a roll call vote.
Yes, sir.
And please help me, because I'm not super familiar with the documentation. Normally, the person that makes the motion is listed at the bottom and supported, and we're giving a particular person third line. This should be a board motion.
It is a board motion.
Not necessarily a recognition of one individual.
It is, and I did state
He
the
did, he
board.
said board in there. It's just a resolution that I brought forward.
But I'm wondering, can that be And I have no problem you making the motion and giving that credit to you, but I don't believe the trustee's name should be placed in the resolution,
In the record?
in the
So-
record as part of the resolution.
Let's just amend and board and Charter Township of White Lake.
That would be fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's fine.
And then please make the motion.
I would like to make
Yeah,
the
you need
motion,
to,
thank you.
absolutely.
So like to make a motion to pass the resolution of the Township Board of the Charter Township of White Lake declaring Police Week, May 12th through 18th, 2019, Resolution 19-016.
And that's replacing Trustee Smith with Township Board at the top?
I think, sure. I mean, it doesn't matter, as amended.
As amended?
As amended.
Absolutely.
Roll call vote.
Nobody seconded it yet?
Oh, I beg your pardon, second?
I'll be glad to second it, and thank Liz Smith for doing this. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Seconded by Mr. Powell? Yes. Roll call vote?
Mr. Colwell?
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes. And I want to give Liz Smith credit for this as well.
Mr. Ruggles?
Yes.
Liz Smith?
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees?
Yes.
The ayes have it, the ayes have it. Okay, at this time, Chief, I know you're getting tired over there, so.
How many more cars you gonna buy now, Chief?
We're full.
Oh,
We're good.
okay.
The lot's full.
Yes.
Trustee Smith, I appreciate that. That was
Yes.
very nice, and the rest of the board, I also appreciate you for making that resolution. That was very nice. I was hoping to catch everybody at public comment, but I was talking to our Human Resource Director. It is National Public Safety Telecommunication Week. So this week is the week for dispatchers. They are the unsung heroes of many police and fire departments. So I want to recognize and thank our dispatchers. I want to thank Dispatch Coordinator Anna Cross, Dispatcher Colleen Hendon, Dispatcher Shelby Dominic, Dispatcher Jill Harrison, Dispatcher Brianna Buzzle, and Dispatcher Emily Ebaugh for their dedication to this township. Without them, we and the fire department can't do our jobs effectively. They are the first line of defense and the first line of comfort to the people who call us for, at many times, it's a tragic event. So I appreciate each and every one of our dispatchers, and I want to commend them for the excellent job they do for the police department, the fire department, and the township.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for coming forward, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, and we're going to head into trustee comments. At this time, Andrea Voorhees.
The first week of April, I was able to be the flag bearer for White Lake Township. We are one of approximately 25 to 30 townships as part of our annual MTA convention held in Grand Rapids. I know my board always teases me and kind of gives me the eagle eye, but it's always a fun to represent White Lake. And I was at the Historical Society meeting last month. They were showing us some financial statements from 1958 and 59. How much did it cost to do an election? $936.24. Some of my favorite entries, for obvious reasons, you'll figure it out, was my Aunt Marilyn did typing for $3. James Reed, the former supervisor who was not supervisor at that time, was an inspector for 2 of the election sites. He was paid $37.75. And my other favorite person besides my dad on that list was my grandpa, Voorhees, Claire Voorhees. He did some registration typing for $75. So stuff like that is very fascinating for going back. And I'm going to continue doing some little historical tidbits of White Lake. We all sat there like, wow. Thank you.
Mr. Powell.
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, and I wanted to thank the board. Again, it's a great example of maybe not totally agreeing, but coming to a consensus. And it was I think it was a great meeting, and I want to thank my board members. Also want to recognize the fact that we have many different religions, many different cultures, many different people that are represented here in White Lake Township. But it is the most important holiday and recognition in the Christian faith coming up this Sunday, Easter Sunday. And so therefore, please be safe, and those of you that believe, go to your local church and give some honor to Christ. Thank you.
Mr. Roman.
I'd just like to thank our residents for coming to the board meeting today.
Mr. Royals.
Yeah. The Planning Commission, we had a meeting on March 21st. We discussed West Valley, which we saw here tonight. And the meetings for April have both been canceled, so I guess there's no pending projects this month. And happy Easter. Do you have something, Sean?
I was going to say May 2nd we'll be together
May
here.
2nd.
Yeah, that'll be the next one. Yeah.
Ms. Smith.
Okay, so I want to tell our community a little bit about Police Week. So as you see in the resolution, it was started in 1962 nationwide, and it is a Michigan Police Week. I am proud to be the first township in Michigan to bring this resolution forward. So I hope many more communities join us before this coming May, and if not, we'll plan for next year. So this is a grassroots effort. There's like perhaps a dozen of us or so on a state committee trying to get this down to the local levels and really show our support to our police officers, because of course they deserve all of that and more. So May 15th is considered Police Memorial Day, and so whatever week that falls in will become our Police Week moving forward. So this year it's May 12th through the 18th. And I'm just going to ask our community to find creative ways to light up White Lake blue so they drive around and see appreciation. It can be a light bulb on your front porch. It can be a ribbon on your door, mailbox, car. I would like to ask my colleagues to wear blue May 14th at our next board meeting. I asked Chief if what the department likes. They appreciate food. I said, well, maybe people will go to food right away. He goes, no, we love it. Bring food. So food and cards and any just small way that you can show them that how important they are to our community and that we appreciate them. So next, I want to talk about CERT. 25 residents, including myself and husband, we trained for 26 hours. We are willing, ready, and able to support our first responders. So I brought my CERT board, or excuse me, my CERT bag. Bear with me here because I do want to show this. So if you see a resident with this awesome green backpack, they have been trained by CERT, and we're giving this great hard hat that we're supposed to wear. We, under the direction of Sergeant Jeff Way and Captain Ted Lilly, we went through this huge binder and we all received certificates that we are trained to assist in all kinds of disasters. And so if you see a resident out with this green backpack and this vest, they are there to help you. Or they're there to help our first responders. Perhaps they're directing traffic, or sometimes they're just giving relief of breaks or food. They're trained in small areas of first aid and things like that. So if you see these people, they're there to help you. So I just wanted to show everybody so you know what it is. And then there's going to be a mock search on Indian Springs for regional CERT coming up, and our team's going to participate in that. So this is a great project moving forward in White Lake. I'd ask our board to support it in any way we can. And one of the ways that we can support it is in the needs and the wants phase of Redstone design. Our CERT team would ask for a little bit of space, whether it be a little room or a closet or some kind of storage where we can have things like radios and equipment and things that our team can access in the future. So I'd like that to be included in the needs and wants considerations. I know that Walled Lake Consolidated Schools asked our board last month to entertain a supportive resolution. We did not put that on our agenda, so I just want to remind our residents in the Walled Lake community that there is an election on May 7th. The library board meeting meets April 24th at 6:45 p.m. in the old building. That will, I can't say for sure, but that might be the last meeting that meets in the current library. I'm not sure where May will be held, but I'll let you know because they will be in the process of moving by the end of May. The Friends of the Library are having a fundraiser on May 4th at the new building. It's a sneak peek event. It's a tour. 5:30 is a VIP entrance. 6 o'clock is starts the tour. And there'll be some appetizers and entertainment. It's a Kentucky Derby theme, so have fun with it. There's prizes for best dress, so feel free to wear hats, and gentlemen can wear fun jackets and things like that. The Police and Fire Banquet have their Firemen and Place of the Year on April 27th to recognize those outstanding individuals from each department. It is Child Abuse Prevention Month, as we talked about. You'll see a lot of blue pinwheels in the community. That's what it's for. I do want to mention that that's something really near and dear to my heart. And right now, CPS is in failure of their audit, so they're charged with protecting our children, and they can do a better job. It's also Sexual Abuse Awareness Month. That's important to recognize. I'd like to ask my board in the future to start vision planning quarterly. That's just something I just kind of want to put in your think tank that we can consider in the future, that we could get together and just kind of plan out. White Lake, we have so much growth and so much happening with the Civic Center that I'd like us to consider some vision planning. And I think that's it. It is Holy Week, so I want to wish everybody a very happy and safe Easter. Thank you.
Mr. Lilly.
Rick, we had a long agenda this evening, and I want to thank all of the board members. I know you turn on TV anymore, and nobody wants to talk about anything. There's no debating. There's no. And I'm just happy to be able to give my input, and even though it's different than everybody else's, I think the board ultimately makes some great decisions. So I want to thank all of you.
I would like to thank all the troopers that kind of hang out here for the long end of a 3 hour, it's about a 3 hour meeting tonight, a little over 3 hour meeting. And Mr. Lilly is correct. This board does not always make the easiest decisions, the most popular decisions, but nonetheless we'll hash things out. And I think we all gather something from each other. You may look at us up here and it may appear as though one of us might be getting agitated with another one, but I think what it is that it's the passion that people have here on this board that they want to try to make sure that they do the best that they can for the community. I myself know that I try to look out and do every day the best that I can for the interest of the community as a whole. And sometimes those decisions are not the easiest ones, and they're not the fun ones. But nonetheless, they need to be made. And we have a good group of people here. We have a good leadership in place, and I sleep well at night knowing that I do the right things, and this board follows its conscience and does the right thing for this community. All of you out there, I'd like to wish you happy Easter.
Hi, Carol.
Good weekend. Hello, Carol. And may God bless and be safe. And with that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Motion support. All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.
Oh, your mallet.